This is Nationalist Review.
Good morning, America, and welcome back to America's most resilient right-wing podcasts. We've been able to survive everything thrown at us so far, and nothing's going to change that. This is, of course, Nationalist Review, and I am, of course, James Allsup, broadcasting to you, as always, from the beautiful gray outdoor early morning inland northwest here. No place I would rather be than here. And I'm joined for the first time on this program. I've done programs with them before. You may have heard those. I'm joined by the coolest monkey in the jungle and the man behind the infamous, you may have seen him on Twitter, the man behind the infamous, what's his name? James, what's his name? The movie star in your Twitter.
James Spectre.
James Spectre.
James Spectre.
Yeah. It is, of course, Spectre. Yep. How's it going, man?
Best Coast represent, man. Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be a fun morning. I'm going to try to slide in here like quietly and smoothly as a black guy sliding into a fat chick's DMs.
Well, definitely, I definitely like the sound of that. That is promising. So this new format we're going to have here is, or I guess the new dynamic we have with me and Spectre here hosting is also going to allow us to change up the show format a little bit. So we're going to be having a tighter format, a more rigid format, but I think that'll be overall, I think it'll be a better show for you guys out there in the audience. So you may know, if you're a regular listener, you know we always talk about immigration and we always talk about the midterm elections coming up. So I've decided to make those regular segments on the program. So what we're going to be doing here in the first hour, we'll talk about the top stories, which of course are the government shutdown, etc. And then we'll move into the second half of the first hour. Will be all about immigration. And so that's going to be how we regularly do the show now. The second half of the first hour will always be immigration. And then the first half of the second hour will be all about the midterm elections. And then we'll fill in the gaps around there. We're also going to take a play from Spectre's show Third Rail. Not directly, but we're going to be featuring a regular segment in the second half of the second hour where we talk about a bigger narrative or a bigger overarching idea that is prevalent in the news cycle or important otherwise to understand, to help you tie everything together, tie all this information, this constant barrage of news you're getting, help you tie everything together and really make sense of everything that's going on. So with the new dynamic comes the new format, and I think you will all really enjoy that. So the biggest story of the week is, of course, the government shutdown. But aside from that, there's also a story about the Russia probe. Spectre, are you tired of hearing about Russia yet? I know I am.
Not now. Now I have hope that this memo is all that it's cracked up to be. The thing that worries me is that surely somebody like Steve King would have told us a little more detail if it was as damning as we're hoping it is. But even if it's let's say 70% of what's promised, it is going to reignite the Russia story to me in a way that I actually want to read it for a change.
Well, yeah, because we've had several months now of just, Trump did some financial transaction back in 2004, impeach Blumph now, this kind of like rabid grasping at straws, cat lady desperation on the Russia narrative. But you're right, the Russia narrative is heating back up, and it's heating back up in a way that is very favorable for our side of the aisle. Now, for those of you who don't know, the story this week coming from numerous Republican congressmen was that there is a secret memo going around Congress that asserts, it's only 4 pages long, but apparently it is chock full of evidence of FISA court abuse. The FISA courts are, of course, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act courts that that federal prosecutors go to in order to get warrants to enact surveillance on American citizens. And like you mentioned, Steve King, Mark Meadows, and others, they're all saying that this has the potential to be bigger than Watergate. And this is very important because if it turns out that these FISA warrants were sought improperly, this has the potential of totally invalidating the entire Russia investigation because of what is called the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine. So if the initial FISA warrants were improper, all information obtained as a result of those warrants would have to be thrown out. And I don't see a way that the investigation would be able to continue at all if this would happen.
Yeah, well, there's that's a huge part of it. To me, though, it also just goes to the bad faith that was brought to the table by those seeking the FISA warrants. It was reported just as early as this morning that the initial applications for these FISA warrants, which are almost always rubber stamped, the information was so bad the judge sent it back and said, "No, we're not going to do this. We're not doing this." And so what they brought back, apparently, if, at least according to the reported rumors, is so poisonous, as you said, that it's, it shows that there was bad faith in the very first place, that all they wanted was the ability to surveil the other political party during a presidential election. That's huge. That's huge. That literally is what was going on with Watergate.
Absolutely. Yeah, and this would actually be worse than Watergate, because this was being done clearly with a lot of people being aware of it. I mean, with Watergate, you can make an argument that it's rogue actors and there's really not as much evidence to suggest a grand conspiracy. But here, what this would be, if this is what we think it is and is as bad as we think it is, this would indicate collusion between federal prosecutors, between the FBI, between Obama-era appointees, and between these FISA judges that are supposed to be impartial and that are supposed to be. So there's a reason you go to court to get these warrants, right? These warrants are only supposed to be granted in cases where there's justification for surveillance of Americans, extrajudicial surveillance. But if they're just granting these willy-nilly to go after right-wing individuals and people associated with the Trump campaign, this has the potential to bring down quite a lot of people. And
well, it also, I would say it also kind of brings into perspective the whole thing with Susan Rice and other political appointees unmasking a lot of what the information that was surveilled. Now you start seeing this. This was not, like you said, a few rogue actors, here and there, but rather this was top down. If you have Susan Rice had Obama's ear at all times, she wasn't acting independently here. This was all part of a plan.
Right. Yeah. And this could be the silver bullet that brings down the entire Russia collusion narrative, not only in the technical sense, as outlined earlier, but as you're saying too, in the public confidence sense. I mean, if it is to come out that these FISA courts and that the deep state, so to speak, was acting in a rogue fashion under the direction of Obama appointees to target the Trump campaign, that would be a massive. They always throw around the phrase "crisis of confidence." The crisis of confidence in the deep state apparatus would reach previously unknown levels, and this would be, I think, a perfect segue into the 2018 midterms. Would it not? Because the Democrats' message for 2018 is, blumph Russia collusion, impeach now, and if we could get that straw man knocked out of the way going into the 18 elections. Man, this whole blue wave is not going to happen.
Oh, that would be huge, because they've used the tactic of the conspiracy theory till now, where here's this and this. This is obviously evidence of the Trump-Russia collusion. Impeach now. Well, okay, then you point out, well, but there's nothing that connects this to that. This seems silly. There's no evidence of that. Well, the lack of evidence is evidence of the cover-up. What? It's you can prove any conspiracy theory using that chain of logic, and without, if Joe Sixpack out in Middle America, who obviously still doesn't give a crap about this, but those who are like do have their ear to the political den, realize that wait a minute, this was all political. This all has to go to the Democrats basically trying to spy on the Republicans during the 2016 campaign. This is all crap. Yeah. None of it makes sense. And like you said, it takes away at least half of their momentum for the blue wave.
Well, yeah, and we'll talk about the unlikelihood of the so-called blue wave earlier. If the Democrats' voters keep getting deported, then I mean that's a wrench in the system. That's a big enough wrench in the system. Yeah, things are going really well in terms of mitigating this so-called blue wave. But yeah, no, I think this is definitely something to pay attention to. My only fear is that this will be another one of these things we hear about. It's one of these flash in the pan moments that we hear a lot about for a week and then it just goes away. I'm hoping that one of these guys takes the risk and sends this document on over to our friends over at WikiLeaks to make this public, because until it's public, there's nothing we can do about it.
Well, there is that. There was a reporter on Fox News just this morning saying that her sources are saying that it could come out, it could be released. Whoever, I don't know the full chain of custody and authorizations, but it could be authorized to be released as late as, or as early rather, as the end of this week, and as late as the end of the month. So, we're talking a space of 11 days. We will know if it's coming.
Right. And of course, President Trump has the ability to declassify this if he sees fit. It is top secret, but it apparently doesn't indicate, from what I've read, it apparently doesn't include any national security information. So that's one of the major hangups when it comes to releasing documents. And if there's no national security information, then it seems like there would be nothing holding back President Trump from declassifying and publicizing this.
And if there was nothing to this, I have my doubts, just because I'm always a little bit skeptical when, we're promised a silver bullet. But the reaction of the Democrats to the very, release the memo has been, to me, if there was nothing there, they wouldn't be worried about it. We had Scott Dworkin this week. He's one of the leaders of the resistance, former communications director for the Democrats, saying anybody who talks about release the memo is a traitor. Oh, that tells me maybe you're worried about something in there. I'm not sure, but that seems like you've got a flop sweat going on.
Right. And that's another thing I read in the reporting on this, is that there have been incidents of improper FISA warrants being sought and obtained. And in most of those cases, when that does happen, you will see bipartisan condemnation of that prosecutor and of that judge. There have been cases in the past that have been condemned by Republicans and Democrats because it's clearly on its face improper. But the partisan nature of this and the fervor with which many of these Republicans are talking about this is indicative that there was something going on here that was had partisan motivations, and that's why you're not seeing any Democrats going along and saying, yeah, go ahead, release it. Because again, yeah, like you said, if there was nothing here, then the Democrats would be willing to call the bluff of these Republicans and say, yeah, go ahead, release it. We don't care. It doesn't matter to us. But the fact that they're immediately going to the treason, they're reaching that far already, should be very informative as to what's really going on here. Now, of course, the second major story of the week from Washington, D.C. is the government shutdown. And this ties perfectly in with the only topic that really matters, which is, of course, immigration and demographics. It's a nice segue. It's like when two sitcoms do a crossover episode. It's a great feeling. So the government shutdown, as you know, the government is shut down, which doesn't mean it's time for anarchy and putting James Mason's siege into action. So unfortunately for some people out there, not how we're doing it. But
no siege posting today. I get it. Okay, fine.
Well, it's funny. I was doing I was doing a live stream and a couple nights ago, Friday night, when the government shut down, and 9 o'clock Pacific when the government shut down. My comments were full of "Okay, boys, time to enact siege." So apparently, post offices watch out.
Yeah, well, at the very least, they could have released all the predators from the DC Zoo and just let them, turn them loose to see what happens. Just unloose just a little bit of anarchy like that. But no.
Sure, we could have had that movie The Purge, with no laws for 24 hours. But no, that's not what the government shutdown means. In fact, as we'll talk about here in a bit, dude, people aren't even going to feel the impact of this government shutdown. That's the major concern, is that for the Republicans, is that people will immediately, they'll go to the post office and it'll be covered up in police tape, and they'll go try to do something at the local federal government office and it'll be all shuttered. But dude, people aren't even going to feel this impact. Apparently, according to Mercury News, almost all of the national parks are going to remain open, and some are even going to be free while the government's shut down, because there will be no rangers to enforce the laws. So this is, if anything, a benefit to the American people.
Well, I'll take that. Yeah, it's all the essential services, security services, Social Security, national security, post office, air traffic controllers, the military, they'll all remain unaffected in operations. Now, where it will hurt will be members of the military who we know, unfortunately, have to live off and paycheck to paycheck, will have their pay delayed, but they will get paid. Normal Americans, ordinary civilians, are not going to be affected by this. But the panic that they're trying to create, which comes about with every government shutdown, is getting to the levels of ridiculousness that shouldn't be possible. On CNN just yesterday, they were bemoaning that during the 2013 shutdown, we had a lot of the scientific research, including NASA's asteroid monitoring system, could be affected. And I'm not kidding. The reporter said, for more than 2 weeks in 2013, NASA reportedly stopped monitoring potentially dangerous asteroids. A big one, by the way, is expected to brush by Earth on February 4th. And my first thought was, oh, God, you guys really have to be reaching here. And then two was, guys, guess what? If we're in danger, the government shutdown is not. We haven't got the laser here. We haven't got the army. Bruce Willis is not going to go save us, no matter whether he gets funded or not.
Yeah, unfortunately, Ronald Reagan got the Simpson-Mazzoli Act passed and not the Star Wars International Satellite Laser Defense System. So even if there was an asteroid coming our way, not much we can do about it. And I would be willing to wager at this point the Chinese probably have better space monitoring than we do because of issues that we domestically spend money on that they don't have to, such as
diversity,
illegal alien benefits, etc. Yeah, we traded space programs for diversity, and boy, wasn't that a great trade. Anyway, so the government shutdown, here's how we got here. The Democrats wanted the DACA deal, as you all know, and they tried to insert DACA as a provision into the budget talks. Republicans do control the Senate, quote unquote Republicans control the Senate, 51 votes in the Senate. But obviously, as we all know, 60 votes are necessary to pass a budget. And Democrats, they held firm. And the Democrats did not cross party lines to vote for a DACA-free budget. They voted against it. And this is a very interesting development considering 5 years ago in 2013, the Democrat line against Republicans was they're being attacked. The Democrats attacked Republicans for including a non-fiscal item, Obamacare, in budget negotiations. And now they're doing the same thing. And of course, the layer of irony to that is that the Supreme Court found that Obamacare could be considered a tax and therefore was constitutional. So
I was going to say the hypocrisy on that goes even deeper because in 2013, Senator Chuck Schumer was giving an interview to Jake Tapper. Oh, God. And he said that the government shutdown then, which it lasted like 16 days in October of 2013. He said that, there was no way that the Democrats should shut down the government over immigration. It would be, quote, the politics of idiocy. And look where we are now.
Yeah. Well, a fellow white person, Dianne Feinstein from California, said just this week, she broke from the narrative and said that people will die during a government shutdown. She said that people are going to die because essential services shut down when you do a government shutdown. And yet, that night, she voted for the government shutdown anyways. So put two and two together here. Really, this really does make you think. The Democrats were willing to shut down the government. And in the words of Dianne Feinstein, let people die. Let your fellow Americans die. Over what? Over benefits and a pathway to citizenship for illegal DACA immigrants that shouldn't be here in the first place. Illegal aliens that are suppressing American wages, that are killing American citizens, that are displacing American children out of schools. And the Democrats are willing to shut down the U.S. government over them. So whomst are these people really working for?
No kidding. My question to you is, do you think that this was a case of they didn't expect their bluff to be called, that there'd be like a last minute, movement by the White House to support some sort of compromise? Or, are they just so beholden at this point, relying on the momentum that they expect to get from, if they could either push or, stand firm on amnesty for their blue wave in 2016. I myself, I just don't think that they're using 2016 calculations to fight a war in 2018.
Right.
This White House is not going to break. It's not. It apparently is going to hold the line, and it's. Yesterday, the White House said that we will not negotiate the status of unlawful immigrant while the country is being held hostage by the Democrats.
Right.
Now, that's not something you got out of the George W. Bush administration. This is not something you got out of George H.W. Bush. It wasn't even something you got out of Ronald Reagan. So, I don't think that they understand that the game has changed.
Right. No, they haven't had to deal with a truly immigration restrictionist president since, you could argue, Calvin Coolidge, almost, 70 years ago. And this is a totally new paradigm for them. They expect that they are able to do the routine. They're able to do the teenage girl routine, right? Where they say, hey, give me the keys to the car. and they get the keys to the car and they say, hey, if you don't give me a big birthday present, I'm going to go run this car over a bridge, and there's nothing you can do about it. Trump is essentially telling them, hey, go for it, knock yourself out, go do whatever you want, because we're not going to break, and we're not going to give you what you want just for throwing a tantrum. And this should be very white pilling to people. And I know there's been a lot of talk about DACA, DACA and immigration enforcement over the past weeks, with some people saying, oh, Trump is just going to be like Reagan and do Simpson-Mazzoli Part 2. And my stance on this was always, let's wait and see what actually comes out of the White House. And the fact that he's holding firm this long is good news. Now, I think the Democrats... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, he's not just holding firm. The day after the government shut down, on Saturday afternoon, they released an ad saying the Democrats are complicit in the murders by illegal aliens. I mean, he's actually trolling them. He's poking it in their eye, saying, okay, this is the wall you want to die on? No pun intended. Yeah, and it's interesting that there are people that you would not expect to be moving on both sides a little bit, like kind of changing their positions. You have Mitch McConnell finding his spine for a change, and apparently, not giving in the way he would, under any other circumstance. And then just yesterday, everybody knows Representative Luis Gutierrez from Illinois. He said that he's willing to not only give Trump the signature border wall in exchange for a clean DACA bill, which, God, if Trump makes that trade, he still loses us. But he said, and I quote, "I'll take a bucket, bricks, and start building it myself. I will do that. I will do that job. We will dirty our hands in order to have the dreamers have a clean future for America." I mean, that's unbelievable coming from Gutierrez, who is probably one of the biggest hardliners on this in the House of Representatives.
Yeah, no, it is. And that's the interesting thing here. And we're seeing this narrative start to come from the left. The left is now pushing the narrative that it's Trump who is uncompromising it, and Trump who is so hard to work with, and he's responsible for this shutdown. But I don't think they really realize what they're saying. I think they're reflexively trying to blame Trump for this, but they don't realize just how much ground they've lost. There's an article from Think Progress that came out last night where they said that reports indicate that not only did Chuck Schumer float discussions about the wall, he offered to support defense spending funding requested by the White House as well. Schumer reportedly left the meeting optimistic about getting a deal after what he called a lengthy and substantive discussion. And Schumer took this,
that had to be earlier in the day, wasn't it? Like early Saturday.
Yeah. That may have actually been late Friday, but
okay.
But yeah, no, that must have been pre-shutdown. Yeah, you're right. But the narrative they're trying to push here, it's pretty clear. They're trying to push this idea that the Democrats are willing to give Trump what he wants, but he just won't compromise with them. But they don't realize that what Trump wants, or I guess they do realize that what Trump wants is the wall, but they're not taking into account how that's going to affect their standing with their own base. Dude, the Democrats' we talk all the time about cucking the base on our side. The Democrats' base is the all 11 million amnesty now for every illegal people. That's who their base is. And any ground they give on this is going to be perceived as cucking by their base.
Oh, absolutely. At this point, this is the GOP's to lose. As long as they do not, there's no gain for them in giving an inch. And Schumer he's getting exasperated by this because Saturday afternoon, apparently, he gave an interview where he said, negotiating with this White House is like negotiating with Jell-O. It's next to impossible. And I kind of thought to myself, so someone being shifty and negotiating with you all day and then coming back to you the next day, like what you discussed never happened. I mean, if I had to deal with people like that, I would gradually begin to hate them. But
maybe consider kicking them out of your country,
something like that.
I think somebody at one point in history said something about how negotiating with a certain group is frustrating because you'll make an argument and beat them in an argument one day, then you'll see them the next day making that same argument.
That's exactly.
I remember somebody said that back a while ago.
Yeah, words that echo through history, so to speak.
Echo indeed.
Yep. So they're not, like what you said was exactly right. This blue wave that they're counting on is a combination of Russia and amnesty. And if they give in, even if it's somehow if we got a deal that even we didn't like, but still symbolically looked like they were funding the wall, they were going to maybe give in on chain migration in exchange for the Dreamers. the all 11 million people are just, no, we're done.
Yeah.
Just the same way we would be.
Yeah.
If Trump gives in on this, we're not showing up and they're not showing up.
Yeah. No, there's no upside to compromising for anybody involved in this, because this is the issue. And this reminds us again that immigration is the central issue that everything else revolves around. And if we don't win the immigration fight, we're not going to win anything going forward. And the severity with which each side's radicals, you could say, treat this issue should be indicative of that. You can look at the no walls, no borders types on the left and just see how agitated they are about this. So this fantastic article from, I think, the San Diego Tribune, which is going to be an interesting one when you read that, about Nacho Bello, which sounds like a Taco Bell promotion. An illegal alien said she empathizes with federal employees who would lose their paychecks, but the standoff has also helped her feel like she has a voice in a country that often makes her feel invisible. I got an idea for you, Miss Bello. You feel invisible here? Feel free to pack your bags and head back to Tijuana anytime. But Bello says, we don't want any more temporary stuff. They want the permanent amnesty. Ali Tarabi, 27, shared his DACA story as a DACA recipient to a crowd of about 80 people in City Heights. Tarabi came to the U.S. at age 5 from Iran. His brother, also a DACA recipient, was 2. I know no other country. I learned the nuances of what it means to be an American, and they're trying to tell me otherwise. They try to tell me otherwise because of a piece of paper, as if a piece of paper determines your value as a human being. Well, it's not the piece of paper that determines that value, though, pal. After receiving DACA, Tarabi was able to pay his way through a degree at UCLA. He's interviewing at medical schools and hopes to become a doctor. Well, isn't that sweet? This illegal alien that wants to displace another American out of the medical profession.
You know, I in particular, like you hear some of these stories about the very younger people who were brought here illegally. We're not ghouls. We can be sympathetic to their individual plights, but we can't make policy based on their sob stories. Right. Outliers exist, but the idea that, well, we feel sorry for this one person, so therefore we should cede our sovereignty and cede our ability to control our borders and our immigration policy, and that our immigration policy should be based on anything but what's best for the American people, but rather for what's best for anybody who wants to come here. This is clown world. This is right. No successful nation in history has ever adopted this policy. None, even the progressive nations of Europe and Canada or wherever, who shame us all the time for being so racist and awful and restrictionist and all that, they don't have these policies. They don't have birthright citizenship. They don't have, well, hey, these people came here illegally a few years ago, so therefore we got to, let them have their way. It's like we're supposed to feel sorry because you were uprooted from, or rather, we will be uprooting you from the one place that you've known for the last 15 years. Well, when you came here, you were uprooting yourself from somewhere you'd been for centuries. Yeah. So it can be done. You can survive it. You will survive. And think of all the cultural enrichment you're going to get when you go to learn about your own people back in Mexico, or Iran, or wherever. It's they're not shitholes, right? So why not send them back to where they'll enjoy themselves? It'll be better than here.
Yeah, and if they want someone to blame, if they want to make this emotional argument about finding someone to blame, and they try to blame us, right? They try to blame the real average normal Americans who just want a sovereign, stable country. They try to blame us emotionally for this. If you want someone to blame the parent that brought you here illegally at age 5, that knew this was going to be a situation going forward, that knew this would be an issue for you in the future. Blame the politicians in the U.S. that incentivized and encouraged illegal third world migration and encouraged people like your parents to come here and create this situation for you. It's not our fault.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. You can't do that. It's clearly the person who should be made to feel bad in this, like you said, is the American citizen. Because, in my case, my people came here in the 1720s. They came to a wilderness, carved it out. They faced savages. They created a nation. And now we're told that immigrants who just crossed the border yesterday, and they're good for my GDP, are better people than my people. That they're more educated, they're more American, that basically some Neolithic bushman who arrived last week and asked for a voting form in some click-clack jungle language that has 200 words is more American than I am. I don't think so.
Right. No, this isn't even a straw man. This is what they actually say. You listen to the politicians, like people like Lindsey Graham, who tell us that immigrants are what make us American. These immigrants are they are the true Americans, and they are more reflective of Americans than those scary white supremacist neo-Nazis out there who want that crazy thing like I don't know, sovereignty or strict immigration laws. They will come out and say this right to Americans. Of course, the GOP doesn't seize on this. The GOP doesn't seize on this and popularize the fact that leftists are actually saying this about Americans. But this is what they really feel. That they really feel like these
the GOP is saying it. Yeah,
yeah. They feel like they're more American than us. Because we commit the thought crime of wanting a civilization that isn't knee deep in clown world, that isn't upside down. And we'll talk about this later. This idea that American interests have to always come second now to foreign interests. We'll get more into this here in a little bit. But no, this is absolutely the paradigm that exists now. And once you realize it, once you realize exactly what is going on here, it is shocking. The idea that we're supposed to be sympathetic. I mean, look, we can be personally sympathetic for this guy, for this kid who was brought here at age 5 and wants to be a doctor. Like, that's a great goal, and he's clearly a high achieving person. Iran needs more high achieving people. Iran needs more people who are going to be high achievers. So with his drive and IQ and intelligence, he would be a great addition to the Iranian economy.
No, absolutely.
Send it back.
It's not just the left or the Democrats that have this idea that this is a nation of my principles instead of the. I mean, like you said, Lindsey Graham, he literally said it's not about it's not the people that are important to a nation; it's the principles. Okay, so I'm supposed to volunteer myself or my sons or to go fight in a war and die for this country, and we're not important; just the ideas are. Okay. Why? Right. How does that work again? And what is a nation? What is the root of the word nation? It means blood. It means it is blood and soil. That is a thing. That is a thing that has been. We talk about the right side of history. Guess what, guys? Except for the last 50 years, that is history. That is what defines a nation, going back to before history was written.
Right.
It's blood and soil. That's how you form a nation. That's how you have cohesiveness. That's how you have concerted purpose together. That's how you build communities, from family to kin to nation. And the idea that I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get on a roll there.
No, sorry, go for
but
it.
Just the idea that it's that somehow you can take people from disparate racial groups, cultures, very rich in different cultures. Let's give them credit. But when their very cultural norms and mores are so vastly, there's such a gulf between them and ours, simple things like the Constitution and the free markets can't unite us.
Yeah, we talked about this. When you mentioned that, it all came back to me. We talked about this last time I was on your show about how America is not a nation according to the political science definition of the term, or the widely accepted definition of the term, because a nation is a group of people that are united by a common culture, common religion, common heritage, and common ethnicity. And in America, 50 years ago, sure, we had that. We were a 85% almost entirely Protestant European American demographic. That's who we were. That's what it has meant to be an American for hundreds of years, since the 1700s. And we've been an 80+% European American country up until the 1970s and 1980s, when it started to trend downward, until now we're 61% in the latest survey. So we are not a nation by any stretch of the definition. And this idea that you can have a nation just based on document, words, principles. Okay, if that were to be true, then the old transitive experiment that we always talk about would be possible, where you transfer the population of Somalia with the population of Japan, and the countries would be exactly the same, according to people like Lindsey Graham and their logic. Somalia would be exactly just like it was, populated by Japanese people instead. It would be Japanese people out in flat bottom steel boats shooting rocket launchers at oil ships. That would be going on, and the Japanese would be inventing, or the Somalians would be over in Japan, drawing anime and making sex robots.
Well, we don't even have to imagine it. You know who else has principles, American principles, written into their very constitution? Liberia.
Yeah.
Somehow, yeah, it's not quite working out the way they hoped, I guess. Yeah, it's frustrating because we know the truth in our bones. This is not something that you even have to logic yourself into. If I say the words "all-American boy," everybody pictures the same thing: blonde-haired, blue-eyed, Midwestern kid, and that's it. There's no substituting Mobutu in that mental image. It's never going to work.
And that's not to say that people who come here or people who migrate here are bad people or that they are, of
course not.
We don't like them or anything. No. And it's also not to suggest any sort of superiority or supremacy complex.
Absolutely not.
You can look at the Japanese culture. I was in, and again, call me a weeb, whatever. I was in Japan a couple summers ago, and I'm probably going back actually here this upcoming summer. And dude, Japan is fantastic. You can walk down the streets in a major city without getting accosted by drunk, schizophrenic, homeless people. You can walk down a major city, even in a bad neighborhood, and not see, racial strife, not have shootings, not have all of these other issues that we have in American cities.
No.
And it's really surreal to be able to experience that, even coming from someplace as you may not think of it as bad as, Seattle is not perceived as like a grungy city or a bad, dangerous city. But dude, even the most dangerous parts of Seattle, I couldn't find any of that in even the biggest Japanese cities. So,
but it is, and also I just want to emphasize I've been to Japan as well. Right after undergrad, it was Japanese. It would not have been. I would not have experienced Japan and Japanese culture had it been 60% Japanese, 30% Mexicans, 5% other. You maintain your culture. You grow your culture organically when it's homogenous. You can't turn your country into an open air shopping mall and expect that this is going to be continue to be a unique culture. It destroys diversity. Right.
It destroys the ability to actually go out and interact with other people. And this is what we're seeing, I think, drive a lot of the new standard of behavior for American whites, which is much more socially reserved. And you're seeing people not go out as much. You're seeing people not go out, not go to shopping malls as much. And, that's a good thing because it means they're not engaging in consumerism. But it also just means they're engaging in consumerism on Amazon.com instead of going out and actually interacting with other people. Diversity is totally destroying social cohesion. We know this from research by people like Robert Putnam and others. And we see these results, right? We see these results happening. So I would much prefer to live in a world that is truly diverse and where you have the ability to experience, Nigerian culture by going to Nigeria, or you have the ability to experience Polish culture by going to Poland, or Iranian culture by going to Iran. These things are good. These are good things to experience. It is good to experience other cultures, but that doesn't mean you have to give them their own enclaves in your own country.
No,
because they will act as groups to undermine your country.
Yeah, that face when you realize you'll never actually go to what Paris was.
Yeah.
Paris is gone.
Yeah, no,
it'll never be the Paris that I wanted to visit. I never got a chance to visit it, and now I will never get to visit it because it's not Paris anymore.
Yeah, I have pictures of me when I was like 3 years old in Paris, and pictures of me like walking down the street when I was 3 or 4 years old in Germany, and it's like, my God, would you ever be able to do that today? Now with the way Germany is, with the way Europe is going, unless some brave historical figure is able to rise up and take control of Europe and get rid of the problems that we have in Europe today. Maybe not in our lifetimes. Maybe it's in our children's lifetimes that'll be able to happen.
Somebody who might push the idea of France for French people and Germany for Germans. What a shock! Yeah. What a awful, evil, subversive thing to say.
Yeah. Yeah, what a hateful thing to say. That's the funny thing is all of what we say, and we can't repeat this enough times. All of what we say is presented as hateful or evil or racist or some other scare word, some other pejorative attack word by the media. But really, what is so scary? What is so evil? What is so dangerous? I understand what's dangerous, but what is so wrong with saying that this country was built by Americans? And I want this country to remain American, and I want an American homeland to exist. That's a desire that every person in the world has. That's a natural human desire to have a homeland, to have a place to return to have a country that makes sense, to have a country made up of people like you who don't hate you.
Yeah.
And when we request that very basic thing, we are told that history has eclipsed us already and that we can't ask for that. And that's too much to ask for. Well, I don't think it is. I think that's a totally normal, rational, reasonable thing to ask for. And we're going to keep asking for it. We're going to keep demanding it, in fact.
Absolutely. I've call me a cuck if you want to, but I actually believe that what we're advocating does not come from a place of hate at all. It comes from a place of love. It comes from a place of, I don't want to see German culture disappear. I don't want to into a morass of international markets. I don't want to see Somali culture, such as it is, disappear. They have a right to develop themselves. I don't want to see any of these cultures just disappear into some muddled, beige, meaningless, superficial thing that would only benefit people who really don't have roots anywhere. People who lack people who are rootless, perhaps. They seem to be the only people
transnational,
yes, transnational
cosmopolitans.
Yes, who it seems like only they benefit from this. But so I just wonder if they're actually advocating for any of this. Those rootless people.
Well, yeah, I mean the rootless transnational globalist capitalist elite. I wonder if in their own countries they're pursuing the diversity with the same fervor they pursue it in Western and European countries. Of course not.
No, they
deport blacks.
They wouldn't deport black people. No, they wouldn't build a wall. Are you crazy? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Oy vey.
So very, very good philosophical tangent there. That was good. I
sorry, I didn't mean to get us off track. I get fired up about that sometimes.
No, that's good. No, that was perfect because, again, that's what we're trying to do with this new show is tie this into the deeper narrative and tie this, not just read the news and relay it to the audience out there. And I think you guys out there listening are really going to enjoy what we have here because we're going to try to weave that narrative and try to make the news of the week, make this news all make sense in context and really further elucidate what that context is. And so everything there is exactly right. And that is, I think that's good because it allows people to understand our frame and our lens, the lens with which we look at these events and understand these things. So, of course, the other event going on is the Gang of Six with the previously mentioned Lindsey Graham, who, not confirmed yet, but may or may not pay foreigners to spend time with his wife, are looking to use the shutdown to pass comprehensive immigration reform. And this is something that I see people blackpilling about already, this Gang of Six bill. But, dude, this is it's a non-starter. The deal is actually further left of what the Gang of Six proposed earlier in the week to Trump, what he lambasted on Twitter as being too weak. 5 of the 6 GOP senators involved here were also in the Gang of 8 in 2014. Or, sorry, that should say 3 of the 6 senators were involved in the Gang of 8. No, sorry, 5 of 6. I read GO6 as GOP. 5 of 6 Gang of 6 senators were in the 2014 Gang of 8 of both parties. And a deal like this has no chance of passing the House. Representative Bob.
Oh, absolutely not.
Bob Goodlatte, who's actually. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, because they also have to deal with, you were talking earlier about the blue wave. You have 5 different Democratic senators who are not going to support this. They're going to side with the Republicans on this, the real Republicans, not the Gang of Six Republicans. You have Doug Jones, Joe Donnelly, Claire McCaskill, Heidi Heitkamp, and Joe Manchin, who they are from red states. They do not want to be tarnished with this.
Right.
Some of them are not even up for, like Doug Jones is up for re-election for a while. They don't want this dirt on their hands.
I believe Jones is actually up in 2018 because it was a special election.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right. Okay. I was looking at my research. I was like, why would he already be so scared of this? You're right. My mistake.
Well, no, I mean, but that's absolutely true. Is that these people, McCaskill from Missouri, like, does she really think she's going to win a re-election in Missouri by voting for DACA amnesty when her state is something like, I believe Missouri is like probably 80% white and then 15% black. Very few Hispanics in Missouri. It's just not gonna it's not gonna go well for them. And these people all have to contend with re-election, if not in 2018, then in 2020. And a smart Republican opposition candidate would use the support of amnesty as a cudgel with which to beat the Democrat incumbent for a race like this. And the 1986 Simpson-Mazzoli Act looks like it's living on as a indicator to Republicans of what not to do. Bob Goodlatte, who is by no means an anti-immigration crusader or a closed border crusader, the Republican from Virginia, came out and said that they're not going to do something like that again. They're not going to make the IRCA mistake again. According to The Hill, when SR 7044, which was the Gang of Eight, was passed with provisions for major legalization program, Bob Goodlatte told the Senate that the House Republicans were not going to make the IRCA mistake again by accepting a legalization program without adequate enforcement measures. So they're not going to accept a amnesty bill that doesn't include wall, chain migration, and the other one, diversity visas. It's just not going to happen. So a bill like this, Gang of Six, has no chance of passing the House. Really nothing to be concerned with here.
Nope.
And as you previously mentioned, there's going to be no DACA talks. There will be no DACA talks until the Democrats can behave. Mick Mulvaney, the White House budget director, and the Leg Affairs director, Mark Short, indicated that Trump would sign a temporary spending bill that lasts 3 weeks. But Trump also said that we're not going to talk about DACA until that resolution is on my desk. Until the government's back open again, no talk on DACA. And as you mentioned, they're also seizing the day with this ad accusing Democrats of being weak in immigration and complicit in every murder committed by illegal immigrants. Did you get a chance to watch that video?
I did, and it's so refreshing because sometimes we get so frustrated, whether it's Trump just talking off the cuff and it sounds like he's going to cuck on something, or him intentionally doing something that we don't like. And then just occasionally he just shows that metal that's, beneath, so whatever else you can say about him, he has a spine. And, he every once in a while, whether it's shit posting like, the shithole comment, or saying, do this ad, where he's literally, I mean, this is what do the Democrats always complain about from the 1980s, the George H.W. Bush ad against the Democrat Massachusetts governor he was running against, the Willie Horton ad.
Willie Horton, yeah.
Yes, this is on par with that kind of muscle, where he's just saying, the Democrats are complicit with these illegal alien murders. And wow, I mean, that's trolling. That's almost like him trolling the Women's March yesterday. I mean, he does things like that no matter how kind of gray-pilled you get, you're kind of feeling like, well, maybe things aren't going our way. It's just like, okay, this boosts my spirit right here.
Right. Yeah, he's like that. He's like that girl that you think doesn't have any interest in you and starts to, you start to kind of move on and move away and think about other prospects. And then she sends you that text and ropes you right back in. You're just like, God damn it. Keeps you on a string, keeps you on a wire, keeps your head on a swivel. Like, yeah, I remember one of the greatest examples of this was Trump after Charlottesville, when everyone in the world was seemingly calling on this guy to cuck and to disavow the marchers in Charlottesville and disavow us, but he refused to do so. He said there were good and bad people on both sides, and even an admission like that just sent the media elites into a frenzy, and they could not stand that. So yeah, no, Trump. I think he has a great instinct for all of this, all the bad stuff he does. We'll get bent out of shape about Jerusalem or about some other Syria. Yeah, but I think he has a good instinct, and he continues to demonstrate that.
Oh, the fact that you see he's changing the paradigm for the way Republicans react, because as we all know, the Republicans have always been painted as, because they're the party of white people, basically. When you look at the numbers, it's 85-90% of Republicans are white. There were the easy attack that the Democrats have always used is they're racist. So mainstream Republicans who want to be respectable, like Mitt Romney, for instance, Lindsey Graham, whomever, Bush, go out of their way to out-signal the Democrats. So when he said, hey, there were good people on both sides, the violence erupted, all that stuff, who was the first out of the gate? It wasn't even Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer who was condemning him. It was Mitt Romney. Mm-hmm. And the fact that
Rubio, who said that bad opinions justify violence. Yeah. If you're an evil Nazi, you deserve Antifa violence.
Yeah. And that's the model under which the Republican leadership and Republican figureheads have always operated. We have to outsignal the Democrats. He's showing you don't have to do that. No one's talking about his comment Charlottesville 6 months later. He survived it and actually changed the direction of the whole discourse. So it's just like that's where his strength is just kind of he's that he just kicks over the table and says we're not doing this. And it works, and hopefully more Republicans will learn from this. I haven't seen too much of it, but like I said earlier, look at McConnell. He's actually standing up for himself for a change.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and he's willing to hold firm because, of course, McConnell has the option of using the nuclear option to get this budget passed. They could just say, okay, we're not going to try for 60. We'll just do the 51 votes to get this thing passed. And if he was really scared about backlash against Republicans, you would think that's what he would do, right? That's, I think, what the Democratic intention was. They wanted to call the Republicans' bluff and get McConnell to use the nuclear option because that just looks like more incompetence from the Republican side. But no, instead, the Republicans are holding the Democrats accountable for their vote to shut down the government over illegals. And I think that'll go very poorly. Will not end well for the Democrats here on this one.
You know the danger of making too quick a prediction, but I'm thinking if this thing's not over by Tuesday, I'll be shocked.
Yeah.
The Democrats are going to come with their hat in their hand and accept whatever they can get.
Oh, and that makes you think too. What can they get here? If the PR does start coming out and it does look bad for the Democrats, would you be willing to, or would the Democrats be willing to concede one of these three things that Trump wants, either the wall, chain migration, or diversity visa lottery, without getting DACA in return? Would they be able to give that up in order to end the torture? In order to get the bamboo shaft out of the fingernail, so to speak.
I think the only one that they would actually give on is the wall, and I say that only because the second two that you mentioned, once those are in place, it becomes a lot harder to undo it. If we ended chain migration, they would have to affirmatively have a campaign to change the law again, and it would be a hard fight. With the wall, they could say, okay, we'll give you your $50 billion or whatever for the wall, but because it's a project that takes several years, they can undermine it over the next several years. They can delay it, and then whether Trump is reelected in 2020 or not, as soon as they have any degree of power in the Congress, they can sabotage the thing. The funding will be there, but somehow we just have to delay start. Oh, we have to have another environmental impact study. We have to have this. Right. Oh, what about eminent domain for the land for the wall? They can drag that out and kill it with 1,000 paper cuts.
Exactly. Yeah, and the supposed funding for the wall that was being discussed in several of these bills, and I believe the Gang of Six bill was like $1.5 billion, which is less than 10% of what's going to be necessary to fund this thing. So even the money they were willing to pony up wouldn't come close to covering the amount they're going to have to spend in lawsuits against groups. Dude, can you imagine when this thing actually does get passed, how much signaling there will be from leftists, like these leftist NGOs, which we of course know are run by a certain international group that will do pro bono legal work to sue the federal government on behalf of landowners in all these eminent domain cases. It's going to be lawsuits coming out.
So many lawsuits coming out of Tel Aviv. I mean, DC groups. And beyond that, also you're going to have the signaling leftist judges, like circuit court judges, appeals court judges at every level who have any sort of power to issue injunctions or stays. That's going to be happening.
Yeah. Well, I think that Trump should take a note from who was that? Madison. The court has made their decision. Now let them enforce it, and just call their bluff. Okay, you want to make an injunction? Fine. Send your troops down here and stop me, guy.
You're gonna make a little injunction. You're gonna give a little speech. It's not gonna do you any good.
Yeah, let's see where that goes. Okay, you judge from Hawaii, like book your flight out here to El Paso. Meet me out here. We'll talk about it.
Ruth Bader, get out there on the front lines. Let's go.
Sotomayor, pack some granola bars so you don't have to collapse from diabetes again. Yeah.
Good God, that woman! I swear, I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg is like a psychic vampire. She's like sucking the life out of the people around her to continue living. Yeah, that's the only. That's why Sotomayor collapsed the other day.
Do you remember a couple months ago there was a story, a totally unconfirmed report that Trump apparently was saying he's going to get like 5 Supreme Court justices, and then when somebody asked him, "Oh, does that include Sotomayor?" Trump said, "Yeah, her health no good, diabetes," and everyone thought it was a joke. But that might actually be a real thing. That might actually be true.
Oh, the Trump curse.
Yeah, the Trump curse. Speaking of a curse, we can't lose sight of what's going on here with immigration. I saw a very persuasive sob story, or was supposed to be a sob story in USA Today, where the media, when they think you're not looking, they'll admit some pretty horrific things. The media is now admitting from USA Today that there are 3.6 million dreamers in the country, 800,000 of which are DACA recipients. Now, these terms are conflated oftentimes and used interchangeably, but dreamers are the undocumented immigrants brought to the U.S. as children. So any illegal brought here as a child. And they say they've been overlooked just how many there are in the country today. So if there's 3.6 million illegals who are brought here as kids, you got to think the average Hispanic family is 3 kids at least. Or, okay, we'll say 2. We'll say 2 to 3. We'll say 2.5. And do the math on that. You think two parents per family, and you're looking at then an additional 7.2 million illegals. Add on to the 3.6 there. You're looking at 10.6 million illegals, and those are just the ones that had children. You add on to that 10.6 million illegals, all of the ones that came here without children, just as working men or working women. And dude, this 11 million number that we use as an estimate, it is a low ball. If this is really the case, you can just do the math here, and it's clear you're looking at closer to 20 million people.
Oh, they've been using 11 million, I think, for about 15 years to describe the illegal population. That number never seems to change. Certain numbers never change in history. 11 million, 6 million. Certain numbers just never change, and you wonder who benefits from this. If you say it's only 11 million, well, we can absorb 11 million. Come on, guy.
Yeah, it's only
you can do this.
3% going.
But I think Ann Coulter has actually done the math and estimates it as high as like 35 million.
Yeah,
that's 10% of the U.S. population.
Yeah. And tell you what, you tour a school system out here, even in Washington State, which is not thought of as a hotbed for illegal alien activity. You watch the lunch counter at a school cafeteria over here and check out how many people are coming through and getting their free government meals. You will quickly find, dude, there are way more of these people here in our country than we thought. And you take a tour of the hospitals, the schools, anywhere that there are services, and you ask them, could you benefit from a reduction of 10% of the demand for your services? Would you be able to give more, service and or gibs or whatever to those who are you're serving? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Every teacher in the world be like, I can reduce my class 10%. Yes. Yeah.
The ER. Can we reduce the load at the ER by 10%? Oh my God, please. We'll take 5%.
Yeah. Well, dude, and the classes, they would be getting rid of the people who don't even speak English. They'd be getting rid of the people who they have to slow down education for, because these people don't even speak our language, and they come here and we have to spend the millions of dollars per school system on ESL programs so these people who don't speak our language can learn to speak our language. And then the ERs, because these people don't have health insurance because they can't get it because they're illegal, they're coming here and they're going to the ER to for very minor things and
for a cold.
Yeah.
Well, they're coming just like the ESL students. They have an outsized demand on the services. They come in there for a cold. Turns out they have 2 untreated skin conditions and 5 other things you got to treat for them. So it's like they cast a bigger shadow on the demand for services than their actual numbers, and we know their numbers are huge. Yeah. So that's a big deal. That is a big deal. Mm-hmm. That's a quality of life issue for Americans.
Right. And we know that the amount of services is finite. The amount of ER doctors is finite. The amount of teachers is finite. You can't just spend more and more money on this. You're going to, at some point, have to compromise quality of services in order to get more quantity. And we shouldn't have to do that in America. We're a first world country. We were the superpower in the world for almost 100 years. We should not have to be compromising quality for the sake of getting more gibs to illegal aliens. Shouldn't be happening.
Oh, yeah. Well, think about the circle there you just created. Well, we need more teachers. So, well, hey, then we need to increase immigration from Haiti so we can have more Russian teachers here to serve all the illegals that are here. Yeah. Whoa. That's we got a little positive feedback loop going on here now. And it's
Talmudic reasoning.
That's ugly. Yes.
Yeah. No. And speaking of how Gibbs are appropriated, some good news actually coming out of this is that the anti-California accelerationism. I don't know about you, but I'm a big fan of the squeeze that is being put on the People's Republic of California. Democrats are very, very deeply concerned that the Trump administration is going to be asking about citizenship on the next U.S. Census. And I didn't realize we didn't do that. I thought we asked about that on the census already, but
how could we not? What serious country would not do that? Seriously.
Yeah.
I assumed it as well. I thought that they only would conduct the census for American citizens. You just shocked the hell out of me. I had no idea that this was a thing.
Yeah, no, we just go door to door and ask everybody, and we'll knock on the neighborhood crack house and 6 illegal alien families will stream out and we'll count them on the census. And we don't ask about their citizenship. I don't see any reason to include people who aren't citizens on the census, or at least legal residents, right? Because the census is done to appropriate to determine representation in the House of Representatives. This is one of the reasons for doing the census. And why would you be counting people who are not legally here as being deserving of representation? It's like taxation without representation, except they're not getting taxed and they're getting represented anyways.
I can actually predict the response to this is going to be, well, this is just as bad as the 3/5 compromise. if you're not going to, these people are here. They use our services. They pay taxes. Don't you know? Illegals pay taxes, just like Jose Vargas. They're going to make that argument that if you don't count them and if they don't have proportional representation, that it's the same as the 3/5 compromise dealing with slavery for anybody who, of course, doesn't in Rio Rhinelander out there.
Yeah, of course. And so apparently the Trump administration is considering asking about citizenship on the next U.S. Census. And dude, I hope they do. And the reason Democrats are concerned about this is because they believe that when illegal aliens see the census truck roll up, they're not going to cooperate with the census takers because, dude, this is a great opportunity, right, for a little bit of one hand washing the other, where the Census Bureau gets driven around in the ICE van, and ICE just gets to collect the dregs of society that the Census Bureau uncovers. Oh, they go to the door and oh, you're not a citizen, Miss Garcia? Okay, I'll be right back with some plastic handcuffs. And I can see the budget negotiations now. He was kind of going through it with the green eye shade, and it's like, I noticed here under the census you're requesting 50,000 MRAPs. What's that for? Oh, it's part of the census process. It's normal. It's normal. Just go ahead and approve it. Yeah. Well, or you could say it's to use to drive through the inner cities. It's becoming necessary at this point to drive through Detroit or LA, either one. With the MRAP. But yeah, no, I could see a lot of collaboration going on here between federal agencies, and not something I'm usually a fan of. Looking at you, Waco, looking at you, Ruby Ridge, but this kind of collaboration could actually be a good deal for Americans. So California, they're concerned that they're actually going to lose a seat in the House as a result, because so many illegals will A, not be counted, and B, not just be afraid of talking to the Census Bureau. I can only imagine the rage, the impotent rage, if that were to happen.
It's only one seat, but I mean, if it adds fuel to the fire of Cal exit, I'm all for it at this point.
Get him out of here.
Because this census thing, I started picturing it the way you were proposing it, and it reminded me of like the movie District 9 at the beginning. And they're just going through it. Oh, we're just taking a survey. We gotta serve you these papers, and then it's just like roll them up, move them out.
Oh God, we can only hope. We can only hope. Pretty soon here in the future, it'll be like a Blade Runner, except for illegal. So the pace we're at, it'll be deactivation. Did you see that movie, Blade Runner 2049?
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, we'll have Ryan Gosling roll around in the flying DeLorean, just deporting illegals instead of replicants. It'll be great. 2049 futurism now. So anyways, a little bit of I hate to rain on the parade. A little bit of a bad indication coming out from DHS. Kristjen Nielsen is apparently indicating that DACA illegals won't be the first going back if DACA is to fully expire. She's saying that all dreamers will be low enforcement priorities, and that situation would continue in perpetuity. But she did say that, of course, if that means if you don't commit a crime, no, it says, of course, it means you can't commit a crime and we will enforce the law. So not good. I mean, we know where these DACA people live. They put their address on the application. It seems like these people would be the first candidates to be sent back.
Oh, yeah. And it would send such a great message. Like, look, we're not going to listen to your sob stories anymore. You're going. But the question is, she was already our last choice to head up her department. Is she just like talking off the cuff and, and Trump even allows that because it kind of like gives him cover? Or is it a case of this is actually what's coming from the top down? I can't divine that.
I think it's a case of her expressing how she feels until John Kelly gets a hold of her and says, look, we're not doing that. I could, because she was John Kelly's girl before this. She not in like a weird sense, but she worked with John Kelly very closely prior to getting appointed to DHS. And I could easily see her getting shuffled around somewhere else in the administration and being made like an undersecretary of something else, and Kobach or someone else being put in charge of DHS if DAC is to expire, because the DHS and ICE, they're going to have a lot more content to sift through. Dude, DHS is going to be like an alt-right podcast listener in March after DACA expires. They're just not going to know where to start.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's just her just voicing her opinion. Too many of these bureaucrats who get put in charge of departments forget that they are there to execute the law and they're not policymakers. And she, it sounds like she just wanted to say something nice, and it has absolutely nothing to do with what's actually going to happen here.
Yeah, she is serving at the pleasure of the president. And if she's done this before too. She's come out and made off the cuff comments that apparently Kelly reprimanded her privately for making. So she might just not be getting the memo that, she's not the policymaker. She's the policy enforcer. And yeah, dude, I really do hope these DACA people are at the top of the list. I've called ICE on illegals at my school so many times that it would just be so fulfilling to see the MRAP roll up to the MECHA meeting or the La Raza meeting on campus and start, doing a bulk order. Well, there have been
complaints that the ICE has actually been targeting illegal alien activists. Not exactly. I'm serious. There was the one in New York. I forget his name now. That like Linda Sausauer and some of those other people were whining about, that he was being deported. He was being detained for deportation. So to me, that gives me hope that what she's saying, like you said, is off the cuff, but the actual policy is we need to start making some examples. And of course, Jose Antonio Vargas is like the top of my list for being made an example of, because these people, we know where they are. They are in our face. They are actually advocating these policies that violate the law that we, obviously the majority of Americans have voted to have enforced. And that's an issue. That's an issue.
Yeah, no, the hubris with which these people were behaving during the election. I just remember those ads from that, like, I forget what the group is called, but they were like, oh, Donald Trump, deport this, all this stuff, like really, really challenging.
The group was CK Hate.
Yes, yeah. And we know what that was. We know that's anti-white. Like, we know they were trying to do that to agitate white people and act against white people. And, whenever I see a story about this sad DACA dreamer being deported, I just remember two things flash through my mind. One image that flashes through my mind is the video of that guy, that square-jawed, very traditional-looking American with his wife and his two kids walking into that Trump rally, being screamed at by a pack of feral Mexicans down in California. I remember that video, and then I remember the Mexicans on my college campus that told me, hey, puto, your grandkids are going to be brown. There's nothing you can do about it. I remember those two images, and I just think, you know what? You deserve to be sent back. And I can only imagine how it's going to feel when I see the news story about, you getting thrown up in that van and sent back home. I
want to see your picture on a postcard on the south side of the wall. And yeah, actually, I cannot confirm and verify this. It's one of those stories that I heard, and it's too good to check. It makes me warm inside to think that it's true, so I'm just not going to bother. At least one of the actors in that ad, the Deport This ad, was deported. Separately. Like, his family was deported because the father was, like, committing crimes. So yeah, that's it's one of those
Challenge
things.
accepted.
Sometimes you choose to believe certain myths to just to give you good feels, and I'm going to choose that one.
Yeah, that's a good story. That would be a very good thing if it were to be true. Speaking of people getting deported for committing crimes, you saw this full court press story, I'm sure, this past week, where they were pressing the story about this 39-year-old guy who was too old for DACA, who has a kid in America, but he was too old to make the cut for DACA, and so he was unfairly deported. You saw this story, right?
Oh yeah, he had like a townhouse. His daughter was like going to college or something like that. I mean, is this the one I'm thinking of? Or?
So this is the one. No, because I think that one came out like a week ago. This one just came out a few days ago. But the media everyone was picking it up and talking about it. Even like my local papers are writing stories about this. But it turns out they were presenting this guy as somebody who, of course, didn't do nothing. He's 39 years old. He came here when he was 8 years old, and he has an 18-year-old daughter. They're presenting him as someone who was just too unfortunate to be too old for DACA. Now the question is, 39? Near the cutoff for DACA, like, okay, this is not children anymore. This is clearly adults, and we know the average DACA age is 25 or older. But it turns out this guy who they presented as just some angel had a conviction when he was younger. When I think he was 18 years old, a prior conviction and deportation for a drug offense. He was a drug dealer, and he was previously deported. So this guy who they're making out to be an angel. He was a drug dealer. And
again, they always drag out, not only was he brought here as a child, but he also has a daughter here. And we're going to be separating the family. I'm like, we don't have to separate the family. Mexico has no rules against a daughter going back to Mexico with her father. It can happen. It's that easy. They came here. They can go.
Yeah. Well, I believe she has citizenship by virtue of being born to a Mexican, right?
Yes.
Mexico. Yeah. No problem.
That's what we're saying. People have dual citizenship, so it's not like Mexico's going to say, no, we're going to keep you all separate. This guy does have to come back, but his daughter has to stay in America because she's an American. No, she is a Mexican citizen just the same.
Yeah.
So what's the problem? Yeah. And I thought Mexico was not a shithole.
Yeah, we hear all the time from even activists in America about how they want to re-annex the southwestern U.S. to be part of Mexico. Like, okay, if you really want to live in Mexico that bad, you're not going to do that here because this is our country. But if you really want to live in Mexico that bad, dude, I will buy your Greyhound ticket back to Juarez, my guy. Like, give me the time and date.
I hate. Yeah, you're 100% right. I hate to be the black pill bro here, though, but have you been to parts of the Southwest? I mean, it is Mexico. I mean, there are parts of Arizona and New Mexico that are old Mexico at this point.
Yeah, my last time in LA, I definitely had some cultural experiences. That was a couple of years ago. I can only imagine how much worse it's gotten, and that was even in like staying mostly in Inland Empire, out in like Laverne, that area out there. I can only imagine how bad LA proper has gotten in the past couple of years.
Well, it's becoming like Mexico City, isn't it? I mean, it's you have a small elite, walled off. You don't get to go to Beverly Hills. You don't get to go to Bel Air or anything like that. If you're one of these proles, these what do they call peones? If you're poor and brown, but they're going to hire you for your cheap labor and all that. But it's like Mexico City. It's a small ruling elite, no middle class, and a poor brown group of people.
That's clearly what the founders wanted when they founded our country, right? That's what James Madison intended when they were framing the Constitution.
Damn right you are. Here.
Well, to close out the section on one solid white pill, every day, every single day, 120 DACA recipients are losing their protection. So that is going to be a lot of dregs of society to sift through once this DACA thing expires, assuming it does expire in March. 120, and actually, we don't even have to wait for these people to expire because they're ending now. So yeah, sorry.
120 DACA recipients every day.
Yeah.
The memes just make themselves. That's at that rate. It's not enough, obviously, but we can handle. That's what, like 2 buses.
Yeah,
that's all.
Yeah, it's a couple Greyhounds.
We can spare 2 buses. That's a couple of Greyhounds right there. That's nothing.
Yeah, what I want to see is I want to see a like a leaderboard. You know how like in internet gaming has like leaderboards on statistics and everything. I want to see leaderboards of like the ICE agents with like the top deportations. And who's doing the most deportations? Like what sector and everything. I get kind of autistic about statistics sometimes, and I would love to see stuff like that. Competitions.
Oh, we're gonna have a fantasy ICE league.
Yeah,
who's your top pick?
I don't know that Smith guy out there in Spokane County is doing some good work, but I don't know. Maricopa County, they're also putting in good work. We'll have to wait and see.
And you have to give extra style points to the guys who go to the Waffle House, eat breakfast, and then go arrest the cooks.
That was a great story. Yeah, got the breakfast bacon and a bounty all at once. Yeah, no, I mean, dude, we could easily. He could easily, transplant some of the former bugmen over to our side. They get, more entertaining. Like, dude, that's way better than internet football, fantasy football. It's way more entertaining.
It's good for you. It's good for your country. And we could even like make cash prizes. I mean, the Israeli government's doing that. They're offering $9,000 to citizens who help round up illegals in Israel for deportation. Why can't we follow? That's a great template. They're our greatest ally. Let's, follow their example.
Yeah, absolutely. And build a wall while we're at it too. Learn from that example. And but maybe we could do with less of the subverting international governments and subverting sovereign states. Less of that, but just
a little, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so that about rounds it up for immigration. So let's take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll get into the midterms. We got some good news coming out of the midterm elections. Things are coming together. The white pills will be a-flowing here in the second hour, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Hour 2 of Nationalist Review. Back in our new format, back in the saddle again. Back here with Spectre of the Third Rail, of course. Before we jump into the content here for the second hour, why don't you throw a quick plug to the other shows, I guess. You do multiple. Now, throw a quick plug to those shows. And if people like this content, find out where they can find more of your solo content.
Oh, thank you. I'm over on The Right Stuff Radio. It's therightstuff.biz. We have The Third Rail. It's a kind of a roundtable panel discussion show. We talk about everything from politics and pop culture to philosophy to it's a bunch of bros sitting around kicking it. And then I occasionally do a little bit of a vanity project, kind of a late night FM radio music show over there. It's called Midnight Special. And very once in a while I do one-on-one interviews of Inside Chats, but it's all over on therightstuff.biz. Thank you.
Very cool. Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, the Midnight Special, those are fun. I mean, I actually got my first foray into real broadcasting back in my freshman year of college when I was a college radio DJ. And so it's fun to hear that come back. So I definitely still resonate with that and still like the vibe of that late night radio. It's something that we could use more of here on the right, for sure. The art projects, right? It's because it's not like I've listened to it. I listened to the latest show, and then I think the second one you ever did, and it's something that we don't often do. A lot of the right wing podcasts, they just jump straight into the content and the news and everything. But switching it up and having a different format is definitely a good thing to set you apart.
Yeah, we're all doing this because we believe in something bigger, and it's just it's a labor of love.
For sure. Okay, so let's jump back into the content, of course. As I previously mentioned earlier in the program, we're going to have a new, more rigid format. So beginning in hour 2, or I should say at the beginning of hour 2, in every episode now, we'll bring back Diversity Report 2049 and look at America's white minority future. We'll bring that back next week, but we're going to be doing a segment on the midterm elections and keeping you plugged in to what's going on in the midterms, because that is our next rallying point. I think a lot of the right wing after the election of Trump and the dissident right, alternative right, whatever you want to say, we kind of fell into disarray because we didn't have that objective to work for. anymore. We didn't have that same goal, the uniting goal of getting Donald Trump elected. And with the 2018 midterms, I think it can be another galvanizing moment for everybody on the nationalist dissident right, because we'll have objectives to work for. Of course, we're geographically spread all across the country, so we'll have different objectives to work for. But the broader objective will be, of course, the replacement of the GOP cuck Congress and of Democrats, if possible, with more slash our guys slash.
Oh, absolutely. This is right now we are in preseason before the football season starts, with the running up to the midterms. Before we even have that, we're going to have the primaries. This is going to be, like you said, we won't have the national election, but we have national values that we want to inject into all of these local elections. And these things make a difference. You could say, well, I don't really care who's the representative from this district of Utah. And maybe in that particular case, that's not important. But there are key offices, there are key positions, there are key cucks who have to be replaced that could make a huge difference. I mean, think of the difference if we didn't have McCain and Flake in the Senate. Just two people from one state. Now, does that matter to you in Maine? Should you have a voice in Arizona? Well, of course not, technically. But because of the way the Senate's constituted, those two guys in Arizona who are effing it up for the rest of us, all of us have a stake in that. So the election years are always going to be exciting years for us, for the dissident right.
Well, of course, and we have to acknowledge that one of the reasons the Democrats have done well, the Democrats have done well when they've nationalized elections. You think back to 2006, they were able to nationalize that congressional election about George W. Bush and make it into a national referendum on W. And that's why they took control of Congress the way they did. And so we can see the value in that. And it may be, we may have principled objections to it. We may say, oh, that's wrong to try to nationalize all these races. It should be about, local representation and everything. But the way that politics has become now in America, every election, every congressional or senatorial election is nationalized. And that's just the way of the world. We're not going to change that by saying how much we hate that. It's the way the game is played, and either we play or we don't. So, to think too about how different things would be if the signalers in chief, if these top GOP cuck signalers, the Lindsey Graham, Bob Corker, John McCain, Jeff Flake, and then I guess to an extent like Murkowski in Alaska, like if these people were not in office, how unchained the rest of the GOP would be to move further right. They would just naturally flow further right as a result, because these guys would not be out there giving cover to the kind of like Eric Erickson type conservatism. So if we can get them thrown out of office, we're on the right track for sure. Now, one of the opportunities to flip a Democrat seat, there are not going to be a lot of opportunities to flip Democrat seats. There will be some for sure, especially if Democrats continue to be reflexively anti-Trump. But one of the opportunities to flip a seat will be in the state of Ohio, which, as we know, went for Donald Trump and is currently occupied by a Republican governor, a Republican rhino governor, of course, John Kasich, but Sherrod Brown, who I thought was a black guy. You know who Sherrod Brown is?
I do not.
The senator from Ohio?
The name's familiar, but
okay,
I'm sorry, he's not on my radar.
So based on the name, you'd think he's a black guy, like Sherrod, like it sounds like a black guy name, but no, he's a white guy. But he's up for re-election in 2018, and the Republican running to replace him, the front runner, as predicted on this show 2 weeks ago, I might add, is going to be Jim Renacci, who is a self-made businessman, current U.S. representative, and he's on the record as opposing amnesty and benefits for illegals, and he wants to expand concealed carry reciprocity. So he checks most of my boxes.
That's good. I don't understand. I understand when you have places like, Maine or California, you have Republicans who are just so obviously cucks. What are we doing with, John Kasich is still just puzzles the crap out of me, much less Sherrod Brown. How is it in middle America we have Republicans who are so just wishy-washy and milquetoast? I don't know how that came to be. And it's not like they're dealing with a state, like Ohio is not a state where you have to pander to the brown electorate. You don't have to, John Kasich doesn't have to do that. Sherrod Brown doesn't have to do that, but they do it. They do it anyway. And so to have a guy like this come along, I guess it's that thing where we talk about how the more exposure to diversity you have, the more based you become. That's why you have Wisconsinites and Minnesotans saying, bring us the Somali refugees. We want them. and people like white people in New York saying, "Oh no, 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 right. we're fine. We're all full here."
Yeah. Well, this is why I think, our shows are so popular in places like California, because you get all these white Americans who have been plunged face first into the diversity experiment, and they want out.
They're culturally enriched.
They're very culturally enriched. And frankly, I think the Democrats and rhinos in states like Ohio do this because they can get away with it. Right. There's no one to hold them accountable for doing this kind of stuff, for cucking.
Well, I think in Middle America, especially, you do have a very strong control on the Republicans by the Chamber of Commerce, and that's a huge thing. Right. That definitely drives their policies towards immigration, integration, all those types of hot button issues. So I think that may be a large part of it. Now that I think about it.
And Mitch McConnell was actually throwing his support behind this guy, J.D. Vance, who wrote this book, Hillbilly Elegy, which apparently a lot of people read and was a big bestseller. I don't know anything about it, but he's a venture capitalist. He's very much a rhino, GOP, safe, friendly type of candidate. But he declined to run. He's instead working on a nonprofit to combat opioid addiction, which is a good thing and a much needed thing out in Middle America, especially. So the GOP, their first candidate was a guy named Josh Mandel. You can look into his background. He is a I believe a dual citizen. He was.
Does he have roots? Does he have roots in the Ohio community? Is that what you're saying? Or is he without roots?
He's much more of a rootless type of guy.
Okay.
He was a former, a chief fellow at AIPAC or something of that sort. So, he's definitely, his allegiances are definitely called into question.
I don't question his allegiances at all. Not one damn bit. Honestly.
Right. He, unfortunately for the GOP establishment, dropped out of the race, and they were left with nobody running. And so this guy, Jim Renacci, the current U.S. representative, is stepping in to fill the shoes, and he's got a great shot to beat Sherrod Brown in 2018. So definitely a race to watch, definitely a race we'll keep on our radar. Of course, the other race on our radar is the Paul Nehlen campaign. And
yes.
And Spectre, I got to ask, man, are we sure we can support this guy? He's I think further right than either of us. I might have to disavow Paul Nehlen.
He's venturing into Steven Crowder territory. Just full exto posting from Paul. No. Paul Nehlen is probably the most. I hate to use the word; it's such a cliche, but he is the most woke GOP candidate, mainstream GOP candidate we could ever find. I'm actually having him next week on Third Rail, and he has noticed things. He has noticed things that he cannot unsee, if you know what I'm saying.
He's committed the crime of noticing.
He has. If you look at the his computer keyboard, the Shift 9 and 0 buttons get a lot of use. Is all I'm saying. I'll let you interpret that however you wish. And you were gonna say some of the things that he's been up to lately that he's been getting media coverage for.
Well, he's been on Fast the Nation, which drew him significant criticism from the Jewish Daily Forward. He's been on FTN actually twice now. He came on my show a while ago. He came on Fuentes' show a while ago on America First Media, and he's definitely playing ball with some people who are definitely outside the mainstream in terms of media personalities, and he's getting blasted by the Jewish Daily Forward for saying that Jewish media exists. This is from the Forward. A candidate for Congress in Wisconsin claimed in a private Twitter direct message group that his critics are, quote, working for the Jewish media. Former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon, so based, and Breitbart, which Bannon left last week, severed ties with Nehlen last month over his anti-Semitic comments. So hold on a second. The Jewish Daily Forward is saying that Paul Nehlen is anti-Semitic for saying that the Jewish media is attacking Paul Nehlen. How does that work? How do you logically make that one make sense?
I think it makes sense. It's called the Mel Gibson paradigm, and in which you name a group of people and say that they control a certain industry. You are then castigated in the media for it, and the way out of it is to go to the heads of that industry and apologize for naming them as what they are. So in that case, it might be you have to go to Mr. Goldwyn, Mr. Mayer, Mr. Spielberg, Mr. Leibowitz, and apologize for saying, as Mel Gibson did, Jews run Hollywood.
Right. Well, it's just so weird to think about that they have the hubris, that the Daily Forward, that literally the Jewish Daily Forward has the hubris to attack Paul Nehlen for saying, oh yeah, the Jewish media is attacking me. It's like, dude, you are literally called the Jewish Daily Forward, and you're attacking Paul Nehlen for saying this. It doesn't really make sense.
In fairness to the Jewish Daily Forward, it's actually one of my favorite publications, because if you were to change the byline and the URL and issue the exact same stories that they do often, you would think that you were reading some fringe publication like the Daily Stormer or something like that, some awful publication. So it's interesting that he is being criticized for basically. There was a guy who said something about that, about if you just name them, that they will recoil, and because they don't like being found out. It's just one of those things. It's just one of those things.
Yeah, it's weird. But Nehlen is running. And you can make your arguments about Nehlen's tactics and whether it's prudent for him to continue, talking about the things he's talking about from an electoral politics standpoint. And I will leave that for people who are more electoral, bigger experts on electoral politics, and people can come to their own conclusions. But it certainly cannot be understated the amount of influence this is having, and we can thank Paul Nehlen too for helping expose Steve Bannon as someone who is not the closet R guy that many people thought he was. Bannon has truly been exposed as someone who is at his core a Tea Party guy and is a civic nationalist kind of guy. Yeah, and he's an economic nationalist kind of guy.
Yeah, and whether you believe that Nehlen in the long run is going to benefit from this, or if it's like a kind of a kamikaze mission, to me it's an echo of the Trump effect. Sorry for the echo pun there, but it's just that people follow the paradigm that they think is successful without even studying to see if it is. They go with what they think is the path of least resistance, the path of the most successful, on an instinctual level. That's normal human behavior. That's how your ancestors survived in the woods. GOP politicians, particularly the lower level ones, the newer ones, and all that, when they see that the majority of Republicans who actually do get into office cuck and they're milquetoast, they're wishy-washy, well, they think that's the way to go. They see Paul Nehlen getting the kind of headlines he gets. They see Trump just defying the paradigm and smashing it all together. It's going to start changing the way that they instinctually react. And I think that's hopefully going to, the bottom line effect is it stiffens their spine. They find their courage again. And I think that's as important. I mean, I would love Paul Nehlen to unseat Paul Ryan, or I don't know if Paul Ryan's even running again. Well, I would love for Paul Nehlen to win in Congress, to win his race. That would be great, right? If he doesn't, if he still serves as an example that gets 5 other guys like him elected, 5 more Steve Kings from Iowa elected,
right?
That's the Trump effect I want. That's the Nehlen effect I want.
Exactly. No, exactly. Paul Nehlen is essentially, digging in the dirt with a backhoe, and he may not win, but the backfill that fills in behind him and that fills in that hole he digs. You'll get people who are no longer afraid of being called, racist, anti-Semitic bigot or whatever, for running on essentially a Trumpian platform, right? Yes. They can say everything Nehlen is saying about the economy and jobs and immigration, most importantly, without naming certain elites, and they will be successful because the most radical guy is now Paul Nehlen. And if you're not going quite up to that edge, the media won't be able to attack you with the same attacks they're attacking Nehlen with.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they've already spent their quiver, right? They have nothing left to attack with.
And Nehlen walks up to that line, just like we say Tucker Carlson walks to a certain line but doesn't put his toes over it, but it's good that he does the way he does. Nehlen goes to a different line, and he shows without going over that line the absurdity of the idea of he shows the properness of the idea of true nationalism and the absurdity of civic nationalism. I have a friend who said that civic nationalism is the idea that a black man born in London owes an apology for apartheid to a white man born in South Africa. That's how absurd the idea of civic nationalism is when you think about it. And Paul Nehlen, by example, allows people that space, that he gives them that permission structure to embrace a stronger right-wing politic, a worldview, political worldview that we don't get from the leadership down, from the Paul Ryans, the Mitt Romneys, and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this, I think, further highlights the importance of getting out there. And if you're somebody who is, look, the barrier to entry for a lot of these races is so low. If you're a 25-year-old guy who has a little bit of money, who has a decent job, you can throw your hat in the ring for any one of these races, and it doesn't require you to burn your reputation. I mean, you can run on the Trump platform, and you don't have to go out and if you think that what Paul Nehlen's doing is too dangerous and too risky career-wise or whatever, totally understandable if that's your personal calculus. But you could go out and run for a seat as a pro-American nationalist, and you could win in a lot of these districts, because most of these GOP districts are still like 80+% white. They're 80+% European American. And if you run as a Trump-styled candidate, you'll do really well, especially if you're a young guy. I think that'll be very attractive. So we can't just count on the political winds shifting on their own. We can't count on the establishment just laying down and dying one day. I mean, that's going to happen, but we need to speed that process along. We need to go out there and have our guys running for office. And we need, 2018, we have Paul Nehlen. In 2020, we need 10, 15, 20 more Paul Nehlens to be out there running for these offices.
Mm-hmm. And there's a geometric effect. Yeah, I was just going to say there's a geometric effect. You see Nehlen, that's going to inspire 5 guys. Those 5 guys, 3 of them make it. The other 2 at least, make an impact. Each one of them inspire 5 guys. It works. It changes the face, it changes the calculus, and it changes again, it's the cliche, but it moves that over window a little bit further.
And it stretches the resources of the establishment more and more thin, right? If they have to combat Paul Nehlen, okay, they'll give $40 million to Paul Ryan's campaign, no problem. But if they have to combat 20 Paul Nehlens in districts across the country, they're only given at that point the $2 million for each candidate. That's a lot smaller war chest to fight against, and you're going to have more and more guys slip through the cracks and be able to beat out the machine, the establishment's money machine, the Koch brothers' money machine, and get elected. So again, we've been big on this show on encouraging people to get into politics, especially if you're a younger guy. Dude, go to a local GOP meeting with a couple buddies and just don't spurg out. And like within a couple of weeks, you'll have a leadership position, because they're desperate to give these positions to young people. And you can,
particularly the off seasons like this, because people don't do as much volunteering when it's not the presidential election year. So this is a good time to jump in there. And you might have to volunteer a few hours on your weekends. Well, it's better than some of the degenerate stuff you were going to do anyway, right? So you get in there, spend a few weekends doing some of the basic bitch work of politics. Mm-hmm. And the next thing you know, it's like, well, we got to have another committee member here. Okay. Yeah. Well, this guy's shown us for the last 6 months, he's been busting his ass. We're going to give him a voice. Now you're one of 3 committeemen. Now you start to control the local narrative. Now you start to control, you can actually put your thumb on the scale for the guy that you want, or you can be the guy.
Right. Yeah, and these counties, a lot of these counties are sitting on tens of thousands of dollars that are just unspent, that they just accrue in donations over the years and don't really spend it on much. And they do fundraisers and events, and they build up a war chest, and they don't really do anything with it until the elections come around. Then they decide who to back. And in a lot of these local congressional races that are solid Republican races, there's not a lot of outside money coming into that race, because the national Republicans know it's going to stay Republican. So if you're one of the guys on the board in one of these solid Republican districts, you'll have the ability to throw the money that could be the determining factor in these races behind a guy or behind you, if you're that guy. And you continue as well to normalize the ideas that we're talking about. You continue to normalize the ideas of pro-American, pro-European American nationalism, and that has to take effect. Like we're not going to be a podcasting and bedroom nationalism movement. Like we've got to move into the public sphere and move into the political sphere. And I know some people counter signal the political activity, and they just think that reading Siege is going to get us to where you want to go. But hate to break it to you, guy with the Amazon stall helm, like that's not going to work out for anybody.
I don't support the where they are, but I understand it. But that's not going to get us anywhere. You want that 1,000th step, you got to take the first 199 or 999, or you just don't listen to me on math. Put it that way.
And it's understandable to be black-pilled about politics, because we've seen politicians betray us year in and year out, right? And like I'm coming from the sort of right-wing libertarian sphere where, I saw the Tea Party so-called libertarians get elected in 08 through 2014, and saw one after one, cuck and backtrack and betray the people who voted for them. So look, I get it that politicians often have a tendency to disappoint, but that's a side effect of the political system. And I think that the cucking that those guys did on things like taxes or like size of government, that's more acceptable than cucking on immigration. And immigration is going to become such a forefront issue, on the forefront of everybody's minds going forward. They're not going to have the ability to cuck on that because they know they'll face electoral repercussions if they do. And we'll be able to build the GOP. Ultimately, my vision for the GOP is to reshape it as an organization, a political organization that works for the interests of the GOP voter base. And we know what the interests of the GOP voter base are. We know that the GOP voter base is, 95%, like 90% of votes for the GOP come from white Americans. And we know the way the parties break down racially and how that all works. So, the GOP needs to be reshaped to fight for their interests and not just fight for corporate Koch brothers, Chamber of Commerce interests.
I think it just takes, and we all have to do this because we all get there eventually, but it takes a level of maturity to say this is a long game. You have to sow the seeds. You have to do the hard work. I mean, this is who we come from. The Northern European stock had to save up for long winters. They had to think way ahead. They could not build successful villages in places, in the fjords, if they were only thinking of just winning tomorrow, just beating tomorrow. No, you have to think about beating a lifetime. And even when we win, it's not like some damn movie where, the king is crowned and then all, peace reigns through the land and they live happily ever after. We're going to keep fighting. We're going to have to keep fighting even after we achieve that vision, that victory. The James Allsup victory comes on this day. Guess what? The next day we have to get up and keep fighting, because if we don't, we lose it. So if you got to be in this for the long haul.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not like some people had the unfortunate belief that once we got Trump elected, then everything's fixed, everything's over, problems are solved. And you're seeing a lot of the people who were just opportunists are getting burned out because they're realizing, man, this is a lot of work, right? This is a lot of midterms. This is a lot of electioneering that I didn't want to do. And I don't mean to start drama, but the people like Mike Cernovich who are now saying like, yeah, I'm done with politics. It's over. It's that kind of short-term attention span. That's not a winning mindset, right? The guerrilla mindset is not the civilization-saving mindset.
No. You have to turn on the guerrilla channel and leave it on. Is what you got to do with that. No, it's absolutely true. I don't get me wrong. I get it. I understand the siege mindset and all that. But we have to live in the real world. We have to change things. And until the ballots are no longer valid, that's what we have to work with. We should work with. And then okay, you're cuck, Spectre. Well, I'm sorry, but this is the way forward. This is the system within which we're working. We have to fight on the ground that we're on with the army we have.
Yeah, and frankly, I think we would all rather have it be done politically and be done in a way that's an honest and fair fight. We want this. We want Americans to rise up and reclaim their homeland and reclaim their birthright, reclaim their nation. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's going to require any of these kind of like post-apocalyptic or dystopian futures that people, predict and LARP about. I really don't think it's going to take that. No. I think that the American people are going to wake up and realize like, hey, this is not how things are supposed to be. Clown world is not how it's supposed to be. And I want my country back, damn it. And we will be able to achieve this in a way that is diplomatic and works out for everybody, and works out for the people who are this country's founding stock and the people who aren't, and it works out for everybody.
And we don't have to we don't have to play by the old rules. I'm a huge fan of Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, but we have to play the game. We have to be on the board, or otherwise, we're not there. Then we're just shit posting on Twitter and getting nothing done. There's no reason not to. I mean, we don't have to fight, and we don't have to grant to the enemy, the opposition, any concession at all. We don't have to offer them the benefit of our principles. We can keep our principles, but we can change the way the game is fought. We can fight guerrilla warfare, but we still have to play the game.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. A couple more primary races here with some good news. Corey Stewart, who was very strong on several prominent issues in the past year, is running against Ed Gillespie. No, he ran against Ed Gillespie for governor in the primary and narrowly lost that race. But he's now running for Senate, and this has been announced for a while. And he's facing some new primary challengers in Virginia. But thankfully, the guys who are now entering the race don't look to be very formidable. It's some people who are, very GOP establishment endorsed guys without a lot of name recognition. And it's still looking like Corey Stewart is the front runner down there in Virginia. Stewart, of course, didn't cuck on Charlottesville after the Charlottesville rally or on the monuments. He has stood against the replacement of Confederate monuments in his home state of Virginia. And he has actually been one of the leaders in the fight against sanctuary cities. Corey Stewart, back in 2007, introduced a policy or lobbied for a policy in his county when he was on the board of commissioners, I believe, in his county, where the police would have to run background immigration checks on everybody they arrested. So he's a very strong anti-immigration guy, and I think that the demographics in Virginia will probably still support a potential for him winning come 2018. I don't think things will get as bad in Nova as we hear that he'll be boxed out of winning. I think he still does stand a pretty good chance of getting elected. Oh,
and especially if the things we talked about at the top hour happen. With the Democrats being the ones who cuck, they lose that outrage over amnesty, and they just don't have the draw. And midterms always favor Republicans more so than the Democrats, at least in turnout. So if you have that motivation on our side, but no motivation on their side, that's going to be a huge thing.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting too, because Trump is actually, I think through his leadership and through the narrative is coming together that this is still a rebellious election, and that getting out and voting in the midterms will still be a rebellion against the system. And that's what propelled so many people to vote in 2016 for Donald Trump was the rebellion against the establishment. And even though Trump is like literally the president of the United States, the narrative that we're seeing and continue to exist is that by getting out and voting for more hardline conservatives, or whatever you want to call them, nationalist candidates, then you'll still be rebelling against the establishment. So on the right, the Trump base and the GOP base is still motivated and energized to go out and fight against these bastards and throw them out of office. But the Democrats are going to be deported or demoralized, dude. Like their voter base will either no longer be in the country because they're illegal, or they'll just have nothing to fight for anymore. They'll have nothing to fight for.
There's just a lack of energy and leadership on their part. I mean, the leadership of the Democrats is at least a mean or average like 15 years older than the Republicans. So you have these, I mean, honestly, these are retirement age people leading the Democrats and crafting their messages in these, in, like you said, an insurgent mindset election. It's just not going to go well. No one's sitting there going, I want to go out and fight and die for Nancy Pelosi on the electoral battlefield. For Chuck Schumer and all these doddering old people that can barely string a sentence together. They want to fight for something, and I think that's going to make a again, we can talk about the calculus, we can talk about the numbers, we can play 538 and all that, but sometimes I think it comes down to the heart and the soul and what drives people at an instinctual and gut level. I think that I've always been one of those guys, especially my libertarian autistic days, reason, that's the thing. If we could just talk to people and reason, we can reason them into believing what we believe in the free markets and all. But people are not motivated. The average person is not motivated by that. They're motivated by heart and soul and what they know in their bones. And I think, if they stick to the right message, they know that the message is right.
Mm-hmm. And I think the Democrats' ability, just based on their electorate, to their ability to craft a cohesive message is going to be an increasingly difficult task, because we think back to 2008 when they got Obama elected, and they were able to establish and build and assemble this coalition of the ascendant, right, of various disparate groups, of feminists and of minorities and blacks and Hispanics and Asians and young people, and they were able to build this coalition. But as we all know, diversity plus proximity breeds conflict, and you're not going to be able to build that coalition anymore and bring the band back together to get them to come out and vote for Democrats anymore, because everyone's going to have a different interest. And these independent factions in that coalition have become so independently powerful. They want the ability to sit at the captain's chair. They want the ability to run the show. And so that Luis Gutierrez types are not going to be able to get along with the Cory Booker types or the Kamala Harris types or the Pelosi types or the Schumer types, because each one of them comes from a different background and a different, diverse, they each represent a different diverse group. And their ability to come together and craft a narrative and craft a message to take back to their voters, it's not going to exist anymore, man. No. I mean, they just simply won't be able to build that anymore.
Well, I think the big mistake is, especially like at the local level. I mean, like if you were to find another, what is the term Rush used for him? I don't want to say it myself. Magical Negro, like Obama. You can occasionally, one person around which this coalition of disparate groups, often conflicting groups, can coalesce. But at the local level, at the Senate level, at the House district level, when you think about that, the national policy of the Democrats, the national narrative has been so just toxically anti-white, pro-pandering, that so you have some elections district in South Carolina that could go blue. You have a white guy being nominated by the Democrats. Well, what do the brown and black people and the coalition of the ascendant there care about busting their ass to get to the polls to vote for one more white guy? They've already been told that white guys are the problem. Why should they bother to go elect some representative they don't even know the name of just because he's a Democrat when he happens to be a white guy? They poisoned their own well.
Mm-hmm. And it's our turn, right? Like that's what all these groups are saying. It's our turn to lead. You look at what these academics and these elites and what the media is saying. They say, oh, it's time for whites to hand over the reins and let brown people take control. Okay, well, Democrats, feel free to do that in these white majority districts that you still have elected officials in. Try to do that in West Virginia where you have a senator. Try to do that in Ohio where you have representatives. Like it's just not going to work, because they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? Where they know that the future is to actually emulate what Bernie Sanders tried to do, which is run a campaign that appeals to white working class Americans. They know that electorally, that's what they have to do, at least for the time being, until we become fully a majority minority. But they're not going to do that. They don't have the discipline to do that. And again, their base will revolt against them if they try to do that. Their base is demanding. Their increasingly non-white base is demanding that they see people who look like them as the candidates. And that's going to alienate the white working class.
If you doubt me that their narrative has so poisoned the coalition of the ascendant against white people, if you doubt me, then you tell me what white Democrat is going to be a odds-on winner for the presidential nomination 2020. There is none. They are already searching for that perfect mulatto, that perfect brown person, that perfect person who can appeal to at least two different demographics: black, brown, black, Asian, whatever. They have poisoned the well so that white people are pretty much off the table. So
yeah. No, you think about the front runners. Just mentally thinking about it. It's
Kamala Harris.
What's his name? Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Tulsi Gabbard, and who else? Like they really don't have a deep bench. Like Tim Kaine, like the least charismatic guy in America. Terry McAuliffe, like the Clinton campaign 4.0. Like, dude, it's no white people. Or I guess Joe Biden would be their only one, but he's like 81 years old.
Oh yeah.
He will be at that point.
And it might turn out that Tulsi Gabbard might be our girl on certain issues that she could be dangerous because she ends up splitting us because she seems to have some unique views on the Middle East.
Yeah, didn't she? She went and toured Syria as like Assad's guest or something. Like, it just triggered everybody on the left.
Yeah, she said some of the wrong things that sound right to me.
Yeah, certain political affairs committees that she was objecting to, if I recall.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so it's a thing. They've made their bed and they have to deal with it. They can't coalesce around a white person, and that's at the national level. But I really think that like in these mixed districts where you have like say 30, 30, and 30, or some combination where there's no clear majority group. Like if it's a district that's majority black, they're going to elect a black district, a black representative. That's fine. That you expect that. But anywhere that there's not that majority group, it's going to be really hard to find someone that the Democrats can run, because the whites and the browns won't turn out for the black. The blacks won't, and the browns won't turn out for the white. But in particular, it's the white that they won't turn out for. You can occasionally get that crossover between black and brown, but the discourse has been poisoned against, we don't need more white men. I mean, they say that openly in their literature. We don't need any more white men. They're already represented. Cishet white men need not apply.
Yeah. 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 It's funny you mentioned that, because we see that, like, I for some reason I was paying attention to like the city of Seattle and their representative race, and you knew it was a race to the bottom of who could be more of a commie. And it's interesting to note that the demographics pretty much dictated how that primary went, right? Because it was an area, I believe in eastern Seattle, I think was a district, or no, it was West Seattle, and one of the candidates her name was like Pramila Jayapal, Indian immigrant. Definitely. She was running against a guy named like Brady Walkinshaw, I think. And as Seattle has gotten more and more Indian, as there have been more and more Southeast Asian migration to the Seattle area, dude, these white candidates just simply can't win anymore. And we saw that with that race. I think I forget the name of the retiring representative, but somebody from Seattle was retiring. And then we're seeing that in all these smaller races all across the country, that the Democrats are their primary results are pretty much aligning along racial lines, and that is a very good omen for us, because it indicates that they are not going to be able to bring the band back together and put things together again after they've been broken. So let's run through a couple short stories here that are not necessarily as of major importance as everything else, and then we'll talk about whether these are good, bad, or really nothing to pay attention to, and then we'll move into the section where we talk about the bigger narrative, as Ben Shapiro would say, the big picture. I don't want to cop a bit from Ben Shapiro. I already get accused of copying enough bits from other podcasts, so certainly wouldn't want to add Ben Shapiro show to that list. But
it's a big picture, and you're stealing it from me, there, Goy.
I need some royalties, there, Goy. For sure. But let's do this. This is actually, we'll run through these a couple minutes each. Good news, bad news, or no news. Spectre, give me your take, what you think about this. MSNBC, Joy Reid, has said that Tucker Carlson has explicitly white nationalist views on immigration. Saturday on MSNBC, AM Joy, host Joy Reid took aim at Fox News Channel's Tucker Carlson for his views on immigration, which she has laid out in the past few weeks on his Fox News program. She says, Tucker's been one of the more aggressive at putting forward what a lot of people have seen as a pretty blatantly white nationalist view of what immigration should be like.
Absolutely good. And I'll tell you why. This is good that they think that, because Tucker Carlson, from I think any white nationalist would say, he walks up to the line, but he never crosses it. He's not necessarily one of us, or at least openly one of us. I think that's what a white nationalist would say about him. Normie conservatives, they like him a lot, because he does the song and dance when he's talking about these things. And, it almost gets like where I can't watch it, because it's like I've seen the song and dance every time. I have to fast forward through the first couple of minutes where he's like, well, it's not about race. It's anybody can come here. Anybody can do this, blah, blah. He always couches it. He always, gives the right deference and all that. But he presents himself as a civic nationalist. And the more that traditional conservative views, civic nationalist views, are labeled as white nationalist or even white supremacist or whatever, the better. Because all those people who consider themselves civic nationalists, that say that I'm a conservative, I don't see color, when they hear that, hey, I have the exact same views as Tucker, and they're saying that he's a white nationalist, he's a white supremacist, that just further turns them off and even draws them further to the right. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good thing.
Right. It takes that pejorative power away from the phrase white nationalist.
Yes.
Right. Because right now it is just used as an attack. But once again, yeah, exactly right. Everything's exactly right.
And it also shrinks the middle, because eventually your normie dad who watches Tucker Carlson, who will tell you and probably raise you to say, I don't see color, et cetera, et cetera. I love Ben Carson. He's eventually going to go, well, if they're going to keep calling me a white nationalist, fine. I'm a white nationalist, whatever. And like you said, it takes away that pejorative, and it makes them say, these words mean nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, so, it takes away the entire attack part for sure. Normally, we're going to have 3 stories here. I only have 2 today. The other story is just the Justice Department is again pursuing federal charges on Bob Menendez, of course, the New Jersey senator. 2 months after a jury failed to reach a verdict in the federal corruption case against Democratic Senator Bob Menendez and co-defendant Salomon Melgen, the Justice Department on Friday said it wants to retry them soon. Menendez and Melgen's first trial took place more than 2 years ago when they were more than 2 years after they were indicted in 2015. Federal authorities allege that Melgen, a wealthy Florida eye doctor, provided Menendez with private jet flights, lavish vacations, and hundreds of thousands of dollars in political contributions. And in exchange, Menendez allegedly went to bat for Melgen with federal officials to help his financial interests in a $9 million Medicare billing dispute and a port security contract in the Dominican Republic, as well as obtaining visas, tourist visas, for 3 of the married Melgen's young foreign girlfriends. So right ahead of the 2018 midterms, feds are going after Bob Menendez. What do you think?
I'm not sure it's going to have a political impact because, as we'll see, the media will just, Senator Bob Menendez, party unknown, in all the news stories. But the political, even if we're kind of almost like normalized to this kind of like just awful corrupt behavior, most of the judiciary is not. The traditional criminal judiciary is not. So he will go down. So good there. I think it's gonna be a wash on politics.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to say this is probably no news for now until we see how the Republicans seize this opportunity, because we saw him facing a very high profile trial, what should have been a high profile trial a couple months ago, and no political hay was made of that. I mean, it just kind of Breitbart talked about it and really nobody else. So no news for now, but if the Republicans do decide to seize on it, as they should, then that will be very good for all of us. And those stories were from Breitbart and Politico, respectively. So let's talk about this. Let's circle back. We talked about this in the first hour. The theme of, I don't want to say the theme of today's show, but the theme of what we've been noticing in American politics for a long time now. And really, this is kind of crystallized in my mind over the past few months, is that in America, the traditional power structures are being reversed. The traditional power dichotomies are being flipped on their head. And we see this especially in nationality and citizenship. And we see that America as a country often serves the interests of foreigners over the interests of Americans. And what's good for Americans is often unconsidered by media and politicians, like we saw with Lindsey Graham saying that Americans don't matter. The American people don't matter. The American ideas and these high-minded values and principles are what really matters. And we can think back to why that is. We think back to why Americans are conditioned to accept this treatment, right? I don't think anybody's born accepting being treated as a second-class citizen. Nobody's born accepting being told that you don't matter and who you are doesn't matter. But since Americans, both of us being born here and raised here, we've been taught to think of ourselves as the oppressor in the global context. We learn about slavery when we're really young. We learn about things like, the Holocaust when we're really young. We learn about the Trail of Tears when we're very young and emotional and not haven't exactly developed our critical thinking abilities. So we accept that the white guy is the devil. Right? And the white guy's done all this bad stuff, and we never learn about the negative things that other racial groups have done throughout history. And then when we get a little bit older, these more principally minded narratives like white privilege and xenophobia are pushed in our face through the colleges and the media and the school system and everything else. They reinforce the dichotomy where people of color are always the oppressed class and whites are the oppressors. But that's not the way it actually works in policy. When it comes to job applications or college applications or government benefits, whites are routinely discriminated against and treated as second-class citizens with regard to the supposed individuals that we apparently are oppressing. Why is this? I mean, how do we change this dichotomy? How do we start to wake Americans up, wake our fellow real Americans up to this and realize that we are being held hostage as prisoners in our own minds of these narratives that are simply not true, and we're being conditioned to accept maltreatment really in our own countries and being betrayed by our politicians and media?
Well, I think if I knew the answer to how to do it, it would already be done. But I don't think that this was something that was born overnight. It was not something that was, I don't think this was a grand strategy plotted out 50, 60, 70, 75 years ago. I think that over time they have seen what works and what doesn't. You mentioned a lot of it, the education wherein we're taught from a very early age all of the great sins of the Europeans and the European Americans. We're taught these concepts like white privilege. And then we're also taught, we're kept in a constant state of confusion. I don't want to, I don't want to be a racist, so I don't see color. Well, that's also a racist. Well, okay. Well, I don't believe that any one race is better than the other. Well, see, you're wrong there because there is no such thing as race. And it's like, okay, well, as a white person, I feel guilty for what my people have done to the world. Well, the problem is you're not white because there is no white race. And so you're constantly, like, every time you kind of pop your head up, they try to play whack-a-mole with you. And it makes it hard to form that moral paradigm because, it's not just education, it's the media, it's journalism, it's entertainment. At every turn, you see that what is reinforced is the idea of the white oppressor, the oppression stack, where each group has their place on this hierarchy of oppression, and I guess what I'm getting at here is the things that have to be reminded, or sometimes it's simple stuff. It's pointing out to people Western civilization. Okay, you're a civic nationalist. You're a white person who considers yourself anti-racist, and that's great. You're a good person, and you can virtue signal on that. But do you really think, and you're also sitting here trying to tell me that you really believe that, there's all this egalitarianism and no difference between cultures. Well, Western civilization did not happen where it happened geographically by accident. It did not, these classical liberal values that we all hold dear did not happen in places where Europeans were not. There's a reason for that. These are uniquely European values. That doesn't take away from the other cultures out there. Chinese culture has produced so much great things. But there's no classical liberal philosophy coming out of China at any point in their history. Mm-hmm. There's no the concepts that we take for granted almost. It's like we breathe them. They don't exist in other cultures. They don't value them. That's why they're different cultures, and that's fine. But we have to be reawakened to the fact that these are uniquely European values. They cannot, the people who we put into these countries, if we want to maintain those values, are not fungible. These ideas, these concepts arise from our culture, which arise from our blood, which arise from our history. They cannot be transferred so easily by raising your hand during a citizenship ceremony to which you recite words that you wrote because you still don't speak English. That's just the reality of it. So we remind people, European Americans, Europeans, that theirs is something special. The fish doesn't notice the water that it swims in. We don't notice, we actually have white people saying, white people have no culture. Mm-hmm. Are you kidding me? Look around you. Western civilization is white culture.
Yeah.
White culture, Western culture got us to the moon. So it is a thing. And so we are fighting against something that's had 70 years to coalesce, to harden, to A/B test their tactics. We're the insurgency. We, even in that new book, Kill All the Normies, about the alt-right, they admit we are the counterculture. Well, the counterculture ideas that they were shopping around in the late 60s and 70s, at the time, they were so shocking and so different. And if somebody had said, how are we going to get these ideas like marriage equality and miscegenation and all these things that we want to push for, internationalism, globalism, open borders, how do we push them? People have said, oh, that's impossible. But they spent the next 70 years or the next 50 years slowly building that bridge. Mm-hmm. And that's where we are now. So it's going to take time. There is no silver bullet to this. But I guess I'm encouraged by the fact that we are growing. We are a thing. People are starting to wake up to this. And Europeans have always been the global minority. And yet our impact is felt on every shore on this planet. Everywhere that Europeans have tread, the earth has shook. Yep. This is doable. We can do this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the monster is waiting, right? The energy and the will to fight is there, right? And the people who are being attacked over and over, like you'll talk to your Joe Normie and they'll say, yeah, I really don't like all this anti-white stuff in the media. I'm starting to notice this anti-white narrative in our culture. Yeah, I don't like it when my politicians say, hey, let's put the rights of illegal aliens over the rights of Americans. People are starting to pick up on what's going on here. And I think once you can combine that feeling that people have, that innate natural feeling people have, with a deeper understanding of what Western civilization is, what Western society is, the importance of demographics, the importance of ethnicity and race, and how different groups behave in a diverse society with multiple different group interests. Once you can really help people understand the sociological backing for a lot of what we are saying, people will realize that there is only one way to preserve this country that they love so much, and this culture and civilization and these values that they love so much. Once they can, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, no, I was going to say that what you just said really triggered something in me in a good way. It's that our work does look like it's overwhelming ahead of us, but I don't believe it's as hard as we necessarily think it is, because, like you said, these things are already inside us. They're inside Joe Normie out there. Mm-hmm. Where we are is because there is this constant barrage, this very sophisticated, constant media, entertainment, educational barrage. And if they let up for even a second, well, you look at growth of the dissident right. And if they push it too far, it also has a negative impact. So they have to constantly be like, keeping that needle just in that right spot. Mm-hmm. And what we do, whether it's just this constant barrage that we have with, offering people alternative views and alternative podcasts and alternative media, or just the random shotgun blast from Trump's, saying, why do we need these people from these shitholes? It's a pin in the balloon. It just pop, it's gone. How do you support the narrative that all cultures and people are equal when everybody knows Haiti is not equal to the United States and it is a shithole?
Yeah.
So it's there. It's like what's in our bones is we know what's in our bones, and it's right. And all it takes is just like popping those balloons.
Yeah. Yeah. The public, the American public and the American people are the frog in the pot of water, and the left and their backers and the people who want to destroy our civilization, they are trying to turn that stove up, but they mess up. They keep messing up on a regular basis, or trying to turn the oven up, and they will turn the dial just a little too far, and people will notice, hey, it's getting kind of hot in here, and I don't like that. And what's going on? Why is this happening? And as we know, if you're going to boil the frog, you got to do it slowly. But the people who are trying to destroy our civilization, they're losing control of their ability to do this in moderation. This is something that has been said on FTN multiple times, and I will repeat it here. So everyone wants to accuse me of being just rehash the nation. I guess this is your chance, your first time on the show to say this. But all of this anti-white stuff was supposed to happen when America was supposed to happen in 2040 or 2050. When America was a 45% European American country, and there truly was no hope to ever restore our demographics and rediscover our nation's history and become again who we once were. This was all supposed to take place decades down the line, but they got greedy, right? They got over anxious or over eager, and they started the process too early. And I truly do believe that once this process has been started, there's no way they can put this genie back in the bottle, and they're going to be reaping the rewards, but also the consequences for their decision.
It's like watching that, the wide receiver who makes an amazing catch at the 20 and thinks he's free and clear, and he starts kind of juking it into the end zone, thinking and bam, he gets knocked the crap out, and it's over. I mean, that's what happened. They were taking that victory lap. They were doing their end zone dance before they crossed that goal line. Well, we saw what happened with Patriots and the Falcons. It's never over until it's over.
We are that free safety coming to level that wide receiver. Absolutely. Absolutely. Cool. Well, good stuff. Let's look real quick at our mailbag. If you want to be part of the mailbag, we've reduced the rates on all the perks on our Patreon page. So if you want to join the mailbag, head on over to patreon.com/AmericaFirstMedia, and you will get the opportunity to participate in our mailbag and in our special members-only Discord server. Spectre, we got to get you in our Discord server. The boys over there have been asking for you.
Oh, I don't need that kind of abuse. I get enough on Twitter.
But so if you want that kind of abuse, I guess $7 a month gets you that access, and we do appreciate your support. Of course, helps us keep doing what we do. So
I will go into the dunk tank for those donations for you. Absolutely.
Excellent. We'll make that happen. So we got a note from Zach who says, not so much of a question, but a comment. Sorry to hear about what's happened with America First. It really sucks that it had to happen, but I'm excited about your company's future and will keep it in my prayers. Well, thank you, Zach. He said, Spectre, I recently started watching Third Rail and I'm excited you'll be participating in Nationalist Review. You're a smart, high energy guy with some hot takes. Keep doing what y'all are doing. Good luck, gentlemen.
Well, thank you.
So yeah, kind of words there from Zach. Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Zach.
And look, all that, I'm not going to comment too much on everything that happened, but I will just say that I'm very confident that the show we've recorded today has been definitely one of my favorites, if not my favorite. And I think, if this is any indicator of how this is going to go going forward, I think you guys out there in content consumption world are really in for a treat, because I think this is going to be definitely climbing the ranks of dissident right-wing podcasts, and people are going to be tuning in for this. And if you're a first-time fan too, I hope you will remain a fan. If you're a first-time listener, I hope you will subscribe to the RSS feed and keep in touch, because we've got some good things planned for the future. I really do think so.
Absolutely. We're going to make Nationalist Review great again.
Make NR great again. That's right. We got another note here that says, for each of you, what is your favorite green text story? Mine is the Anon Works in IT story featuring Adobe Reader. If you haven't seen it, it's worth the read, I promise. Ooh, that's kind of a hard question. See, I'm a big fan of all the Tendy stories. I like the Tendies ones.
Mine are all not family friendly, so can't go there. It usually ends with my face when my girlfriend, and some words after that.
I also like the Google Ultra one. Have you seen that one?
I have not. I'm not up on my memes. I'm far behind on everything these days. I'm getting to be old. I'm getting to be too old for the chans.
Yeah. I haven't browsed 4chan in a while. I did a little bit last week to check up on some narratives and stories, but I was browsing Poll almost every day during the election. But after that, I just stopped, and I haven't ever been able to go back to it. It's too much. I'm 22, man. I think I'm getting old too.
Just follow like Best of 4chan on Twitter, and you get the best stuff right there.
Yeah, see, I'm sure this will draw some flack, but I follow the 4chan subreddit on Reddit and just sort by like top of the month to see the best green texts, because that way you keep in touch with the memes and you can kind of sort through all the garbage.
I'm not going to catch cancer from you, am I? If you're on Reddit.
I know.
Okay,
I know.
it's
okay. It's unfortunate. Hey, by the way, I'm the only person out there to have done an AMA on Are the Donald and also be banned from Are the Donald.
Nice.
So I set Reddit history, I think. Yeah, I posted an article about Ivanka saying we need more refugees. I posted that with the caption, "Whoa, based Ivanka demands more diversity," and I was banned like 3 minutes later. It did not work well for me, but cool. Well, I think that just about does it. Unless you got anything else on the bottom of the stack there.
I do not. I've really enjoyed this, and I know that there's a very large audience for this show, and I'm just going to promise y'all I'm going to do my best to live up to what James has built here, and we're going to have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, well, thank you for stepping in. I mean, I was I was kind of concerned about the future of NR and wondering if there would be a future, but I think that with you here riding shotgun, we're definitely going to be in good hands. So yeah, thank you for stepping in to fill in that co-host position, and people are going to be hearing a lot more from both of us going forward. This is going to be a lot tighter ship in terms of the show format, and I think that in terms of the quality of content, you're going to be getting a little bit more diversity of viewpoint, and I think that's going to be good for people as well. So if people go ahead.
I was just going to say, as they said at the end of the great movie, this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Absolutely, that's right. So hey, if people want to hear more from you, where can they find your other shows? And I know we already did the plug, but you can't. Repetition doesn't hurt. So where can people find your other shows and content?
Absolutely, most of my stuff is on radio, or rather therightstuff.biz, Third Rail, Midnight Special, Ovenside Chats, and make the occasional rounds. But this is going to become a staple. So if you need to find me, you're going to be able to find me here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And we'll be back, of course, next Sunday with another fire episode of Nationalist Review. Until then, follow Spectre on Twitter. We'll link his Twitter in the description of the episode here. Follow this RSS feed. This is our new RSS feed. We're anticipating this will be our permanent one. So follow this RSS feed and get the latest episodes straight to your podcast app inbox. We'll be back on iTunes very shortly. I know that, with the Spreaker, being a custody battle, mommy and daddy fighting over custody of the Spreaker page right now, but we're trying to get that one back, 2 Christmases, of course, we're trying to get that one back. But yeah, thanks again, Spectre, for filling in here and joining the program. We do appreciate it. We'll see you guys all next Sunday, right back here on Nationalist Review.